Story 1. Parents lied about not having money for my college fees but invested in my brother's business instead. So I ran away, and now my mom is leaving my dad if I don't come back home. Hi, so I am a 17-year-old guy, and recently my parents told me that they would prefer for me to be able to pay for my own college tuition. There are just a few months to go before I start college, and I have already been accepted into the school of my choice. I had obviously been expecting that my parents would help me out because they are financially well off enough to do so, and they had done this for my brother as well, so I did not think that I would have to pay for college by myself. My dad is an engineer and my mom is a nurse, so we are financially stable. I would say that they have enough money to be able to afford to send me to college without having to make me work for it or rely on student loans or anything like that. Besides, like I said, they had done this for my brother earlier, and I obviously expected them to have a college fund set aside for me as well, because I was just judging them by the standards that they had set for me by comparing it to what they did for my brother. My brother is 6 years older than me, and he went to business school a couple of years ago. My parents paid for all of it, and I know that because my dad actually bragged about it to a couple of his friends several times about how he had sent his older son to the best business school in the state and how he was going to get back 10 times the amount that he had invested in his son when he was finally a successful businessman in the future. So I just assumed that they would want to do the same for me, even though I was not going to business school and I was actually going to major in psychology. They did not bring up the topic of college tuition with me when I started applying to colleges at first, so I thought that I would hint at it, but they never said anything about it until I was finally accepted into the school of my choice, and I was forced to bring it up with them and ask about how I was going to be able to pay for all of it. Because they had just never said anything about the tuition, I felt like I had to ask them about it at the very least to make sure that they would pay for it for me, just like they had done for my brother. I expected them to say that it was taken for granted that they would take care of the expenses, but instead, they actually ended up telling me that they would want to encourage me to pay for everything myself and work through college or get a student loan. That was obviously a huge shock for me because I had always assumed that they would pay for college for me. My first instinct was to get mad at them, and I think it was reasonable for me to be upset because I knew that they had paid for my brother to go to college, and yet they were not ready to do the same for me, and that reeked of favoritism. This whole discussion happened a few weeks ago, and when I asked them about why they had paid for my brother to go to college but were not willing to do the same for me, they told me that there was a valid reason for all of it and requested me not to get mad at them before I knew the whole truth. My father explained to me that recently one of his relatives had fallen extremely sick, and this was a person who had helped him when he was in the very early stages of his career. He was referring to one of my dad's uncles who had been diagnosed with leukemia a couple of years ago. He had a decent amount of wealth of his own, but he had squandered all of it away with years of gambling and drinking, and his children were no good either because they did not have any ties with him anymore and did not even visit him when he was on his deathbed. Naturally, my father felt the need to step up and take care of him because his wife had passed away long before he was diagnosed, and after his wife's death, his children stopped speaking to him or even visiting him and pretended like they did not even have a father. He did not have any other family to look out for him because everybody kept their distance from him due to his addictions, and nobody wanted to take a responsibility like that by keeping in touch with him. But my dad was grateful for all the opportunities that his uncle had arranged for him in the beginning of his career, and so he felt the need to pay off his debts by taking care of him after his diagnosis. He had been taking care of his uncle for the past couple of years and had been paying for his treatment out of his own pocket, which had seriously affected his savings because healthcare is expensive. Unfortunately, there was not enough money left for him to be able to pay off my college tuition because he also had to think about his own future, and it would be very difficult to make do with the kind of money that they would have after sending me to college and paying for all of it. And that is why he wanted me to be able to pay for myself, and he told me that he was really sorry about it, but I had a future ahead of me, and he knew that I was capable enough to get through it, but he was getting older and he needed to think about retirement as well, so he would want to encourage me to look out for myself. I was still upset about it even after he told me the reason, but I thought that it was a good thing that he had done, and I did not want to hold that against my father. I kind of bought the story that he told me because part of it was actually true, and I knew that his uncle had been suffering from leukemia and had a lot of addictions because of which his family would not talk to him anymore, and we were kind of the only visitors that he would have. So it did not seem unlikely to me that my dad was helping him out with the medical bills and everything. I also knew that it was true that his uncle had helped him find his first job, and my dad had actually been very upset when he passed away a couple of months ago and had been devastated at the funeral. My family would also visit him quite often, and I had seen the bond that my dad had with his uncle firsthand, so it was difficult for me to hold that against him and be mad at him for spending so much money on his uncle's treatment and not leaving anything for me in my future. It was a difficult choice for me, but I managed to forgive my father and told him that I would find a way to pay for college by myself. If it came down to it and I really had to get a student loan, then I would expect him to be on board with that, and he told me that he would definitely help me out in whatever way that he could. My mother seemed to be the most upset about all of this, but she did not say anything at the time, and I thought that everything was normal between her and my dad because if there was any tension between them at the time, I did not see it. I just guessed that she was maybe upset because I would have to work through college on my own while my brother did not have to do the same during his time. She kept apologizing to me for everything even more than my father, and I could tell that she felt bad about it, but I told her that it was all okay and I did not mind because at least my father did not spend my college fund on something stupid, and he was actually trying to save somebody's life with the money. So I guess that was a noble thing to do, especially when he was doing it for a person whose own family had abandoned him. So I tried to convince my mother that it was all fine, but she still seemed disturbed. Anyway, after I realized that my father would not be able to pay for me to be able to go to college, I started looking for other ways and decided to start working in the months leading up to when college would finally start. I had done a few internships before and I did have some money set aside, but that would barely cover anything, and this was more of a last-ditch attempt to get some more money. But eventually, I knew that I would have to take out a student loan, which is something I did not want to do because then I would end up having to pay it off for the rest of my career, and I didn't even know if I would get a good enough job after I graduated. So everything was just really stressful for me for the past few weeks. But then I found out something last week that really changed my perception of everyone because I figured out where my dad's money had actually gone, or rather, where it was about to go. I guess you guys must have figured it out by now that a lot of this has to do with my brother, which is why I was talking about him so much. So before I get into what I found out, I would just like to talk a little about my relationship with my brother so everything makes sense. My brother is a lot older than me, so we never really grew up as friends. We were not on bad terms, but we were not close. It was all very neutral, and I guess my parents didn't care to fix it because it wasn't inconvenient for anyone. We were not always playing together, but we were not constantly at each other's throats either, so they didn't feel the need to intervene or try to fix our relationship. And that is why my brother and I were always very distant, and that's the way we liked it. But I don't know why something shifted when I hit high school, and he started acting like I was his competition or something. We did not have a good relationship before, but after high school, things kind of became very weird between us, and I would say that it was all because of him. He had just started college at the time, and whenever he would come back home from college, it would feel like he was constantly trying to rub it in my face that he was back from one of the best business institutes in the state, and I don't know how to phrase it better, but he had turned into a kind of a show-off. He had also started actively putting me down, which is not something that he used to do before, but he did it very cleverly and always disguised his insults as jokes. So if I tried to confront him about it, then he would just tell me to take it lightly instead of making such a big deal out of a joke and making me seem like I was being petty on purpose. I would say that he turned into a jerk after he started college, and I would think that he still is one because otherwise I don't know why he would do what he did. After he graduated from college, he moved back here for a couple of weeks before he moved into his own apartment, and those few weeks were the toughest for me because he would constantly keep picking on me. And I just got into a huge fight with him one day, and after that, we just sort of stopped speaking to each other. But he would still make it a point to take digs at me and be mean to me for literally no reason. That guy is literally 26 now, but he still thinks putting me down is going to make him feel better. He had been working at a small firm for a couple of years after he graduated, but I knew that he was not happy there because he thought that he was too big of a fish for such a small pond and he wanted something better. He would constantly keep complaining about how stupid every single one of his coworkers was and insisted that he was so much better than them, but the only reason he could not find a better job at this point was only because of the recession and stuff like that. If you ask me, the real reason he could not find a better job first because maybe just going to a great business school does not make you a good businessman, and his attitude was really bad and he was insanely pompous and difficult to work with, but that's just my opinion. He would complain about these things at dinner whenever he would visit, and my dad would feed his already massive ego and tell him that there was something better waiting for him, but he just had to pay his dues instead of telling him that maybe he would get promoted or find a better opportunity once he stopped being so annoying. Anyway, I had shared with my friends that my parents would not be able to pay for my tuition because I was very upset about it, And I am really thankful that I did, because otherwise I don't think I would have found out that my parents were actually funding my brother behind my back. My brother and I do not follow each other on social media, and I actually have him blocked because I have zero interest in his life and I do not want to see him anywhere. But a couple of my friends do follow him because we went to the same high school, and they had older siblings in his year as well, so they just follow him for fun. And 1 week ago, a bunch of my friends sent a post to me that my brother had put up, and that changed everything for me. So it was a picture of our family, but I had been cropped out of it, obviously, and in the caption, my brother was thanking my parents for helping him so much throughout his life, and now they were also the first investors in the business that he was about to start up. All my friends had the same question for me. If my parents did not have any money to be able to pay for my college tuition, then how come they were able to invest in my brother's business? It did not add up, and they felt that it was important for me to know about it because they sensed that something fishy was going on, and there was definitely something that my parents were not telling me. And even I was really taken aback by that post because I had no idea what any of this was about, and I first wanted to talk to my parents about it, but then I decided against it because talking to them would be pointless. I already knew what was going on, and if I tried to talk to them, then they would just lie about everything, and then maybe they would even make my brother take that post down and make him lie to me as well. That day was very difficult for me because I had to make an impossible choice, but in the evening, I decided that I was no longer interested in living with my parents anymore because they had shown me that I was on my own, and they would go to any lengths to support my brother but avoid supporting me because it was clear now that they did have a golden child, and it was not me. I acted normally throughout the day and pretended that everything was fine, but at night I decided to make a run for it. I had already been packing throughout the day, and I got an Uber and then headed to a friend's house. I had already talked to him and his parents, and they were okay with letting me live with them for a couple of weeks at least until college started. They knew about my situation and sympathized with me, which is why they had even offered to pay for me to go to college because they were pretty rich and could afford it, and I am still considering it because it's going to be weird taking money from a friend and his family, but they seem more than happy to help me out, and I have been living with them ever since I ran away from home, so they have already done a lot for me. But I just feel weird asking them to do even more, even though I am not actually asking them. They are the ones who are offering me help. But anyway, coming back to my parents, they were pretty torn up about everything the morning after. As soon as they realized that I was not at home and had gone away in the middle of the night, they started bombarding me with phone calls and texts, begging me to come back or at least tell them where I was so they would know that I was safe and sound. The worst part of it was that they even had the audacity to ask me why I was doing this to them. I did not say much. I just forwarded the post that my brother had put up and left it at that, and they knew that there was no point pretending now, so they started coming up with excuses to try and explain everything to me. It was quite insulting that they thought that I would actually fall for their stupid and lame excuses. They literally said that they were trying to protect me, which is why they did not tell me the truth. I don't know who needs to hear this, but I think it would have been better to tell me the truth rather than trying to protect me by telling me a bunch of lies and then breaking my trust in my heart. They tried to say that if my brother's business succeeded, then they would make sure that I would be able to pay off my student loans in the future, and I just needed to look at it as an investment and not a sacrifice. But the money was actually the least of my concerns because what really hurt was that they were willing to bet on my brother but not on me, even though it would have been much less expensive to send me to college than to help fund an entirely new business. And on top of that, they had lied to me about not having enough money even though they did, but they just thought that it would be better to spend it all on my brother instead of me. I was deeply hurt by everything, and I told them that I did not want to come back and I definitely did not want to keep in touch with them because it was very obvious to me that they did not care about me, and I did not want to live in a house with people who did not love or care about me because then I would just be a burden on them. And that's the last thing that I wanted. I think that sort of freaked my mother out more than my father because she completely threw him under the bus and told me that she had not even been on board with this plan right from the beginning and knew that this was wrong. But she just went along with it because my father insisted upon it. She tried to talk to me for a couple of days and kept telling me that she was really sorry about everything and it had never been her intention to hurt me. But she just kept going with the flow because my father said so, and eventually she was in too deep to tell me the truth no matter how much she wanted to. She told me that she was ready to help me out with the money, and she would arrange it no matter what it took, but I just had to come back to her because she did not want to lose me as her son. I was not answering her calls, so the only way that she could speak to me was through text. I could tell that she was genuinely upset and sorry about everything that she had put me through and really wanted to make things right with me. But I did not know how to respond to any of that because I was still hurt that they had all lied to me and thought that they would get away with it, so I was taking my time and getting back to her. But I guess that was a mistake because that led to some terrible consequences for my father. But I can't say that he did not deserve it because in my opinion, he totally deserved it. What happened was that because I was taking so much time in responding to her, my mother decided that this was all my dad's fault. And I kind of agreed with it and said that she was going to leave him if he did not get me to forgive them and make me come back at the earliest. They have been fighting about this for the longest time now, and I don't know why, but my dad thinks that this is my fault, which is kind of ridiculous because if anything, I am the victim here and he has no right to blame me for anything. He was the one who masterminded this entire situation, and if he had just been honest and transparent with me right from day one, then I would not feel so betrayed. I guess I would still be mad that they were not going to pay for my college tuition, but he was the one who added an extra layer of lies to all of this. What he was doing was bad enough on its own without all the deception. But I still feel kind of bad because I know that my parents love each other, and my dad is really pissed off that I am still choosing to take my own sweet time in coming back home because the longer I stay away from my mother, the more she blames him, and their fight just keeps getting worse. He believes that I have punished them enough, and now it's time for me to come back home, but I still don't think I'm ready to go back. And I need some more time to think about everything because what they did was really wrong, and I need my time to get over it. 1 week is just not enough for me to recover from all of this right now, and I'm not going to come back just because my dad needs me to save his marriage. He did not stick up for me when I needed him, so I don't see any reason for me to do the same for him. But at the same time, I do feel kind of bad and responsible for ruining his marriage for refusing to go back home, even though I know that it can ruin my parents' marriage. Update 1. Hello. So it's been 10 days since I ran away from home, and today I finally decided that I was going to go back to talk to my mother. My father stopped texting me and told me that I was free to do whatever I wanted because he was sick of me and my mom and called us both selfish and inconsiderate, which is pretty rich coming from him. My mother, however, has not yet given up on me and keeps texting me every day. Earlier, she would just tell me that she was sorry. But now she has started telling me that not only is she sorry, but she also misses me a lot and regrets everything that she agreed to, and that now she doesn't want anything except for me to come back home, and has even spoken to my brother and has told him that she will not be contributing any money towards his business because all of it is going to go to me, and she is going to make sure that I get to go to college and I don't have to worry about where the money comes from. She has been consistent, and I really can't stay away from her anymore because I know that she is truly and genuinely sorry for everything. She had been led into this by my father anyway, and while it does not absolve her of everything, it's a bit of a consolation to me. At least she has told me several times that this was never her plan, and she never wanted to do any of this, but my father convinced her that if they invested in my brother's business, then they would get the money back sooner and would be able to help me pay off my debts if I did end up taking out a loan to complete my education. She bought it and even lied to me to protect my feelings, but now she knows that it was all a really messed up plan, and since she actually feels sorry about it, I am ready to go back to her and at least try to talk to her and make things better between the two of us. I have mixed feelings about my dad as of now, so I really don't know what I'm going to say to him when I see him. Update 2. So I am posting this at night right now, and I am in my own bedroom after a really long time. My parents were very surprised to see me today, but only my mother seemed actually happy. She hugged me and started crying and apologizing as soon as she opened the door, and my father just stood there lurking in the corner of the room looking grumpy. I don't even care if he was happy to see me or not. I just feel good that my mother was happy to have me back. She told me that even though she and my father were living in the same house, they had not been speaking to each other for the past couple of days, and now that I was back, she did not know what was going to happen. She told me that my brother was extremely annoyed that she would not be investing in the business anymore because now he would have to look for other investors, and that would delay the whole process, but she knew that it was the right thing to do, and so she was doing it without any regrets. My brother has not been speaking to her ever since she communicated her decision to him, but she can't help it, and she was not going to screw this up once again. My father also did not speak to me even once after I came back home, but I can't help that either. Both of them can stay mad, it does not matter to me anymore. Anyway, at least my mother and I are back on speaking terms, and I'm happy about it. She told me that she did not have a lot of money set aside because my dad earned more than she did, but whatever she had, she was going to make do with it and even ask her parents for extra money if she needed it, but she was going to make sure that I did not have to worry about my tuition, and that's more than what I could ask for. My friends and his family were sad to see me go, but they were happy that things were finally looking up for me, and I can never thank them enough for what they did during these past few days. Update 3. Hey, so I am finally in college right now, and things have been great with my mother. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same for my father or my brother. My dad moved out a few weeks after I moved back in, and he has been living with my brother ever since then, and they have been working on his business together because now he is a partner in it. My parents have been struggling to make their marriage work and have been going to counseling sessions, but I don't know how it's been going because I don't really ask my mother about it. I have no interest in anything that is related to my dad or my brother, and I just want to be happy with the one person that I know I can count on, which is my mother. She stayed true to her word and arranged my college tuition with the help of her parents, so I don't have to worry about anything, but I do think I will start paying her back once I start earning. For now, I'm just going to focus on my grades and having fun in college so that I can make the most of this experience. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My MIL locked me in a bathroom while I was in labor during her daughter's wedding because she didn't want me to steal the spotlight. A few hours later, I woke up in the hospital. My husband, Rick, M30, and I, F29, have been blessed with a daughter 2 weeks ago. This is our first child, and we are obviously very excited. Things have been very busy on our end, and we're just adjusting to being parents. It's a hard shift for both of us, but we're trying our best. We don't really have much help because of what happened on the day May, our daughter, was born. It was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, and I don't think I can ever forget it. Even the happiness of May's arrival is not enough to help me shake the paralyzing fear I felt that day. I think I would have died if not for my husband's timely help. Despite the horrible event, I still feel that since it involved family, we should be a little softer with them because May is the first child in the family. But I am unsure, and my judgment is clouded with all these hormones and baby duties, which is why I've come to Reddit for help. This story might be long and has a lot of characters, so please bear with me. Rick has 2 sisters, Anna, 28, and Emma, 24, both of whom are younger than him. I have a very good relationship with both of them, and I think there is no animosity between us. We aren't very close since all of us are busy in our careers and don't meet that often. Emma doesn't even live in the same city as us, but we try to catch up once in a while and stay connected via texts or calls. Another important person in Rick's family and in this story is my mother-in-law, F53. While I am on very good terms with Anna and Emma, Rachel is a different story altogether. We don't exactly see eye to eye, and I honestly think she has a problem with not just me, but with everyone. She's the biggest control freak you could imagine, and she just doesn't stop. She wants everything to go according to her whims and fancies. Her kids, all 3 of them, respect her wishes for the most part because she was the one who raised them after their dad abandoned them. So, they try to make life easier for her and themselves. Moreover, if anyone dares to want something other than what she wants, she reacts, and the reaction can range from disapproval and moping to a full-blown meltdown with tears and tantrums. It gets difficult to deal with her, so I try to stay away as much as possible. Rick understands this. He knows his mother is problematic, so he lets me keep my distance and deal with her as I see fit. On my end, I understand how he feels about her, even despite her controlling nature, so I let it be. She doesn't like me much, so she doesn't meddle in my life, and that suits us all. However, things got out of control a few days ago, and it was all because of her. Now, I don't think anyone can ever forgive her. On the day May was born, Anna was getting married. It was a lovely ceremony, and her husband, Jonah, M30, is actually Rick's friend. He proposed to her around a year ago, and Anna had asked me to be a bridesmaid, and I had accepted. However, when Rick and I found out I was pregnant, I had to request her to ask someone else because I knew I wouldn't be able to manage it. This was almost 6 months after the proposal, so only 6 months before the wedding. I was 3 months pregnant by then. I had assumed I would get backlash from her for backing out halfway, but I knew I had to prioritize. I was extremely nervous and jittery before telling her. I feared our relationship would be strained forever, But to my relief and surprise, none of that happened. Anna was overjoyed when I told her. She actually forgot about her wedding for a while. When I told her I wouldn't be available for duties, her response was, "Taking care of you." She even considered shifting the wedding because she didn't want me to miss it, which I would have if May had been born then. That ultimately didn't happen for a lot of reasons, and honestly, she shouldn't have done it anyway. It was a close call in the end, but she supported me throughout. Emma became the maid of honor, and I knew the two sisters were busy preparing for the wedding, so I didn't bother them much during the pregnancy, which was harrowing for me. Still, both stayed in touch as much as possible, came over and supported me a lot. I feel a little guilty for not supporting Anna on the most important day of her life, yet she supported me the whole time. The only person who was a little pissy about the whole thing was my mother-in-law. I think she was annoyed I couldn't be the maid of honor anymore, which caused some disruption in the wedding preparations. That seemed like the only logical explanation, and I got where she was coming from. But the hostility, for lack of a better word, continued even after Anna was okay with the pregnancy and my not being maid of honor. The bride wasn't mad in the slightest, but Rachel somehow started antagonizing me from that point on. It was weird, but I thought maybe I was on edge because of the hormones and she was on edge because of the wedding, and all this was just creating false narratives in my head. I ignored her as best as I could, and things were mostly fine. Things got out of control, literally and figuratively, during the wedding. It was 2 weeks ago, and I was pregnant out of my mind. My feet were swollen, my belly was huge, and I felt like I would pass out. But I still wanted to attend the wedding because Anna wanted me there. I had asked her beforehand if she wanted me there because I wanted it to be her day. I told her the presence of a heavily pregnant woman might take the attention away from her, and I didn't want that. Wedding days are for the bride and groom, and I would hate to be the one to take away from that. When I told Anna this, she was actually offended and hurt. She said she couldn't believe I'd fill my head with this useless crap and not attend her wedding. She said she didn't care about attention or limelight. All she wanted was her family there to support her on her wedding day. She said I had to come and not worry about drama. I knew she meant it. She's not the type to mince words. If she hadn't wanted me there, she would have been upfront about it. But she did, and she said so emphatically, and I believed it was my duty to be there for her. So, even though I was physically uncomfortable, I knew I had to be there for her on her wedding day. I'm not gonna lie, there were a lot of people murmuring, but I did my best to ignore them because I knew Anna was happy I was there. That's all that mattered to me in that moment. Rachel didn't interact with me much, and she glared at me the entire time, but I was too uncomfortable to notice. I didn't have the energy to deal with her or make sense of her passive-aggressive behavior toward me, so I just let her be. She could glare all she wanted. I wasn't going to react to her. Then came the main incident that left not just me but everyone around me shocked and scarred to the core. I started feeling uneasy just before the ceremony was about to begin. I had already met Anna. I got up and went upstairs, thinking it would help me feel better and I'd return once I did. Little did I notice that Rachel had followed me. I was feeling sweaty and weird, so I went to the bathroom, and suddenly my water broke. It was a genuine flood, and I started panicking because even though I love my daughter more than anyone, she had chosen the worst possible time to arrive. I couldn't think straight. Thankfully, I saw my MIL in front of me. By that point, I was crouching in pain. She rushed to me, and I told her to take my phone and call Rick immediately because we needed to get to the hospital. She helped me up and made me sit in the bathroom, and I gave her my phone. That's when she flipped. She said she'd make sure Rick came in an hour once the ceremony was over because she didn't want me to steal Anna's spotlight. I asked her if she was crazy and said there was no way I could handle this for an hour. I tried snatching my phone from her, but she locked me inside and took my phone with her. So there I was, pregnant with my child literally on the way, in a bathroom, sitting on a toilet with no phone and no husband. I don't know how I didn't have a full-blown panic attack, and thank God I didn't because I don't know what would have happened otherwise. I got up and gradually made my way to the door and started banging on it. I screamed and screamed, but since the washrooms were on the first floor and everyone was seated for the wedding by then, no one heard me. I screamed until my voice was gone, but no one came. That's when I genuinely felt I was going to die and take my baby with me. I was exhausted, drenched, sweating like a pig, and had no voice left. That's the last thing I remember. I don't know what happened after. I had passed out from exhaustion. I don't even remember how I got to the hospital. I just know I did. I woke up a few hours later, and I was in the hospital with Rick by my side, sobbing. Took me a few moments to realize where I was and make sense of everything. When I saw Rick crying, I assumed the worst. Everything came flooding back. ML locking me in the bathroom, my crying, and I thought May didn't make it. When Rick saw I was awake, he heaved a sigh of relief and started crying in my arms. I didn't know what to make of it and felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. Then I saw the nurse come in with a baby girl, and I heaved a sigh of relief. I honestly wanted to slap Rick for messing with me like that, but he said he wasn't messing with me. He was just relieved I was okay because I was unconscious when he found me in the bathroom. I held my daughter for the first time, and I don't think I'll ever be able to forget that feeling or that any better emotion than that exists in life. I just don't think anything will ever top what I felt in those moments. Rick didn't give me any details at that point, and I'm grateful for that because I didn't have the energy to deal with it. I could faintly hear some commotion outside, and I asked him what was up. He said Mal was outside and wanted to come in and see her granddaughter. I told him what had happened in detail. I told him what she had done, how she had endangered our daughter for no reason. I also told him there was no way I was allowing her near my daughter. Ever. To me, she was dead. He said he knew everything. When he discovered me in that state, she broke down and told him everything. I told him that just because she broke down doesn't mean I was going to forgive her. He laughed and said his mother was dead to him from this point on, and that he was going to press charges for life endangerment. He said he would go the legal route and make sure she was punished for what she had done. When I heard him say that, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. I know he loves his mother, all three of them do, but after the stunt she pulled, which could have cost me and my daughter our lives, I was in no mood to forgive her. If Rick had chosen her over me, our marriage would have been over. There would be no coming back from that. Somewhere deep down, I anticipated that he might choose his mother because despite everything, she had worked very hard to raise them. Maybe I wasn't expecting him to stand up for me the way he did, but I'm not complaining at all. If anything, it has made me love him more, if that's even possible. I asked him how the wedding went and he said it went fine. Emma and Anna were waiting for him to call so they could visit us. I asked if Anna was mad, and he laughed, saying I didn't have to worry about Anna at all. She's been beaming with pride and joy, claiming that her complete family was at the wedding and that May's birth was the best gift she could have received. I had tears in my eyes when he told me that, and I told him to call them immediately. Within a few minutes, Anna, Emma, and Jonah were at the hospital with me. The best part? Anna and Jonah were still in their wedding clothes, and Anna said there was no way she was going to pass up the chance to take a wedding picture with her niece. I started bawling full on, and it was such a heartwarming moment. After the picture, I apologized to Anna for ruining her day. She hugged me and said I was looking at it all wrong. I had made her day. I told her about Mal's behavior ever since we announced the pregnancy, and Anna said the only thing I did wrong was not telling them sooner. Maybe they could have put a stop to her drama. I told her I didn't want to cause trouble, and Emma chimed in, saying any amount of trouble was fine as long as I was safe. I have tears in my eyes even typing this because that's when I knew they loved me like family. I wasn't just Rick's wife to them. I was family. Anna is one of the best women I know. She's so secure, so happy. No wonder she is where she is today. I really don't know how Rachel is so different from her children. It's like they saw her and realized that's not what they wanted to become. It's weird, but I don't care. Amal was still outside apparently, and Anna had told her on her way in that she would make sure Rick and I pressed charges. Amal wanted to come in and meet May, but I didn't want her anywhere near me. Anna said we needed to keep ourselves safe from her. Anna apologized to me, feeling she hadn't addressed her mother's overprotective instincts or made it clear enough that she had no problem with my pregnancy. She said that if she had, maybe the incident could have been avoided. I told her she had made me feel safe, and there was no way she was at fault. All the while, Rick was outside talking to Mal. When I was discharged and came home with May 2 or 3 days later, Rick told me what he and Emil had talked about. He said he had informed her he would be pressing charges and that she could eat shit because nothing would change that. He also told her she was never allowed in May's life. She was not her grandmother in any capacity. She chose to put my life and my unborn child's life in danger over an assumed slight that didn't even concern her. He also said all the money he had been giving her, Emil was living off of Rick and Emma's money, would be substantially reduced. That's when she started crying, saying she had slaved away her whole life for the kids and didn't deserve this. Rick told her that while he knew and appreciated all she had done for them, that didn't mean she had control over their lives. He said she was in the wrong and he had been ignoring or making excuses for everything she did for years, but not anymore. When it came to May and me, she needed to know she had crossed a huge boundary and proven she was not safe to be around, especially since Anna never had a problem. Rachel said that as a mom, she understood that Anna hadn't wanted me there to steal the spotlight, but Anna overheard and tore into her. So we are proceeding with the case, that's for sure. But Rick will handle it because I have a newborn to care for and can't be bothered with this drama. Rick said he would handle it. None of the siblings are willing to talk to her anymore. Anna has completely cut her off. Emma only talks to her when necessary, and Rick and I are obviously no contact. I don't think Emil anticipated this, and maybe she genuinely meant to protect Anna, however twisted it sounds. I'm not defending her, not in the least, but I still feel bad for her because it all backfired so horribly. Now a part of me wonders if they should talk it out with her because it feels wrong and bad to me. I don't know, maybe I'm not thinking straight. I know if I mention this to Rick, he'll fly off the handle. He's furious with her and can't even look at her right now. I hadn't anticipated this, but here we are. Update 1. Well, any reconciliation is off the table forever. I know I haven't updated in a long time, but well, I'm a new mom, so between keeping myself and my kid alive, I've been busy. The good thing is that May turns 8 weeks old in a couple of days, and we're all super excited. Anna and Jonah have been real sweethearts, helping Rick and me a lot. Emma had to go back to work but calls almost every day. May is literally the light of everyone's eyes. They dote on her, and the group chat is full of her pictures. There's been no contact with Emil. I convinced Rick not to press charges because we have too much on our plate, and it wouldn't serve any purpose. Rick was reluctant, but he agreed because neither of us has the energy for anything else. When we told Emil last week, she appeared thankful. I say appeared because the woman is genuinely unhinged, and she showed everyone her true colors last week. Last week, Rick and I woke up at around 1 a.m. to loud banging on the door. I thought it was a robbery, and I ran and hid with May while Rick went to open the door. I could hear shouting, but I didn't dare come out because I didn't want May to wake up. Turns out it was Emil, and Rick said she was behaving like a crazy person. She kept screaming that she wanted to see May and that we couldn't keep her away. Rick said he had to threaten her with the police before she backed off. She was trying to force her way in. We immediately alerted Anna and Emma because if something was wrong with her, everyone needed to know. We were concerned, but honestly, it was for nothing. The next day, she sent us a disturbing text. She started off saying we were being nasty and horrid to her by not allowing her to see May, and we were punishing her because her only crime was being a mother. There was some more melodramatic nonsense in there. Gradually, her text became more unhinged. She said she had the burden of raising 3 kids and always had to juggle one kid's priorities over another. And that's what she felt she had to do on May's birthday. She conveniently forgot that May was literally a fetus, and Anna herself had said multiple times that she had no issue with the pregnancy and the wedding happening at the same time. I still understood this part. What rattled me was what she said next. She said she was worried that with May in our lives, she wouldn't be as important to her kids anymore. When I announced my pregnancy, she thought Anna would be mad because that's what a normal woman would feel. But when she saw we were all excited about both the pregnancy and the wedding, she didn't like it. Basically, she was saying she didn't like that we were all happy together with each other and for each other. She wanted us to be jealous and competitive. She said that when she realized the due date would be near the wedding, she hoped Anna would be mad at us, and maybe then May wouldn't take everyone's attention. But that didn't happen, and all everyone could talk about was May. She said she felt disrespected that a baby who wasn't even born had taken her place as the uniting factor for the siblings. She sent more things and was still typing when I asked Rick to block her. I told him she was deranged and unsafe for May and all of us. I've had a constant headache since seeing those messages. I can't believe a woman over 50 is in competition with a 7-week-old baby. It doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't have to, because I'm done with her. I'm done making excuses for her behavior and trying to understand her motivations. She can go to hell for all I care. We forwarded the messages to Anna and Emma, and they are disturbed too. They think she might be having a manic episode, and Emma said she will fly down to get MIL checked at a facility. I think it's a good idea, but I'm staying out of it. This behavior is crazy, and I don't want anything to do with her anymore. Update 2. We have a restraining order against MIL. She didn't try anything again, but we're being cautious. Emma got her to a test and spoke to both the psychologist and psychiatrist. Everything is fine with MIL. She was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, but that was it. The doctors said there was no underlying medical reason for her behavior and suggested Emma take her to therapy. Emma has since gone no contact. She said she was willing to help if something was wrong, but hatefulness is who MIL is, and she can't tolerate her anymore. I totally get that and share the view. She might have had my sympathy and support in a few months if she had a psychiatric issue, but now that's been ruled out, we know this is who she is. There's no reconciling with that. This is why we took a restraining order for Rick and me. May's safety is of utmost importance, and MAL has proven twice she's not safe. Moreover, she has ill will toward May specifically, so we have to be even more careful they don't come into contact. I think this will be my last update, and I hope I never have anything more to share about this entire episode. This has been harrowing for the family, and I'm just grateful we are all safe. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My parents chose my brother's vacation over my wedding even when I told them 8 months in advance, so I got married anyway. Now they're crying because I didn't wait for them. 5 days ago, my girlfriend of 6 years and I got married in a small and intimate ceremony. It was initially just supposed to be our families and a couple of really close friends. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, my family could not make it. To be more precise, my family could have made it, but to them, taking a family vacation to Australia with my brother and his family seemed like more of a priority. My wife and I have been together for 6 years, and we got engaged about 10 months ago. We hadn't formally invited anyone or sent out the invitations until 4 weeks ago, but we knew when we wanted to get married. Both of us had informed our families 8 months in advance so they could keep their calendars clear. When our wedding finally rolled around, my parents had reassured me that they would keep that in mind, and honestly, I hadn't expected them to do what they eventually did. But I guess I should have expected it because I have always had a strained relationship with my parents. I grew up in a family where my brother had the reputation of being the gifted kid, and I was just the troublemaker. My brother is 8 years older than me, and he has always been better at every single thing, be it grades or sports or other activities. So, of course, I felt a little overshadowed by him when I was little. But I felt like that feeling would go away eventually, and it might have if my brother had been a less arrogant person. He just seemed to constantly try and rile me up on purpose. He would always mock me and bully me with his friends, and I was a particularly small kid, so it was quite easy for him to do so. I would always try to complain to our parents, but they never even bought it since, to them, my brother was the perfect kid, and he was probably incapable of even making mistakes. So that went on for quite a while, and by the time I reached high school, I had so much built-up resentment against my brother that I would go out of my way to create trouble whenever I could. Because if I couldn't be as great as my brother, then I would be remembered in other ways, right? From my childhood, I had developed a bit of a rebellious streak, and it only got worse as I grew up. By then, my brother already had a job, and even then, he couldn't stop constantly trying to show off. Then one day, after I had graduated from high school, he said something really snarky about me being a disappointment or something, and I just lost it. He had been cruising for a bruising for a really long time, and that day we finally duked it out. That was almost 10 years ago, and since then we have not spoken. I'm pretty happy about it because honestly, I think my life got much better after I stopped speaking to him, and I think I got a lot more anger against him out of my system the day that I beat him up. I got pretty beat up too. But I was happy that at least I had given him a black eye that he totally deserved. Of course, after that, my parents were very upset with me because they thought that I had instigated him and picked a fight with him on purpose. They had never been ready to believe that it was always my brother who was riling me up and trying to get me to fight with him, and even on that day, they did not believe me. They were very cold to me for the next couple of weeks, and things only started getting better when I left for college, probably because they were going to be empty nesters after that, and they wanted to fix things with me before I left. But I never forgot about the way they had treated me, and even though I kept in touch, I just couldn't let go of how unfairly they had treated me in comparison to my brother. The only reason I had even invited them to my wedding was because they were the only family that I had. I'm not particularly close to any of my relatives, and my grandparents, unfortunately, are no longer with us. In spite of our strained relationship, we had made an effort to actively keep in touch with each other over the past 10 years. They tried to get me to fix things with my brother as well several times, but I don't think either of us was interested. He got married about 6 years ago, and he has 2 kids now. I was not invited to his wedding, and I didn't even care. My parents even tried to get me to invite him to my wedding this time, but that was definitely not happening. I know that he's still the arrogant and insufferable brat that he used to be because we have to see each other on the holidays when we go back home, and his behavior has not changed in the slightest. The only difference is that we don't acknowledge the existence of the other anymore. I'm also still aware of the fact that my parents do have a soft corner for him more than they do for me, but I still hadn't expected them to just take off on vacation with him and his family and never even care that I was going to get married around the same time. And I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure that he did this on purpose because he knew that if it really came down to it, our parents would definitely choose them over me because that's what they had done all our lives. He probably wanted me to feel bad, and in a way he succeeded because right now I feel like absolute crap about all my decisions. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, right around the time that we sent out the formal invitations, my parents visited me and told me that they probably wouldn't be able to attend because, just 3 days back, my brother had invited them to join them on their family vacation to Australia. This was going to be an all-paid vacation since it was a perk for my brother because he had really impressed one of his clients, and he wanted to take his entire family with him. So it's not like they could postpone it because my brother had already taken the time off, and my parents expected me to postpone my wedding since it was only going to be friends and family, and we were getting married in a venue that belongs to one of my wife's relatives. Obviously, it would be more reasonable for them to expect me to postpone my actual wedding than for them to decline the vacation. They told me that they were really excited and looking forward to spending some time with their grandkids, and they hoped that I would understand. I wanted to argue with them so badly, but instead, I just smiled at them, and I told them, "Okay, I'll wait." They were so clueless that they didn't even think that I didn't actually mean it and seemed satisfied with my response, so they left. I spoke to my wife about it, and even she was quite shocked because we had always known that my brother was more important to them. But for them to so blatantly push me to the sidelines was just so disrespectful. Obviously, we had no intention of waiting or postponing our wedding, and we decided that we were just going to go through with it, with or without them. So, 5 days back, around the time that we were supposed to get married, we went through with the wedding, and we even posted about it in the evening. That came as a huge shock to my parents because I had promised them that I would wait, and I didn't. When they saw the photos, they immediately started calling me and texting me, but I ignored them because that was the day of my wedding, and I didn't even bother to read the messages until the next day. The next morning, when I woke up, I read the texts that they had sent me, and it was exactly what I had expected. They were telling me that they were very disappointed in me and that they hadn't expected me to betray them like this. So I decided to contact them and speak to them about what happened because I really had a lot of things to say to them, and I'm sure that they could say the same for me. It didn't take long for them to answer my phone call, and as soon as they picked up, they started shouting at me and said that they had never felt as insulted as they had the day before. Because everyone was shocked that I hadn't invited them to my wedding since I wasn't close to the rest of my family, and I was also a bit of an introvert, nobody had expected to be invited to my wedding. But all of them had apparently believed that my parents would be there for sure and had been surprised when they saw the pictures and my parents were nowhere to be found. So everyone in the family had a lot of questions, and it was so typical of my parents to care more about what other people thought than about what they had put me through. Anyway, I decided to speak my mind to them, and I told them that I had no intention of waiting for them to return from their vacation with my brother and his family, even if I had said that. because I knew that arguing with them would be pointless since it was not like they were going to decline to go on vacation with their golden child and his family, even if it meant skipping my wedding. And I already had a lot on my plate, so it's not like I had the energy to argue with them, and that's why I had promised them that I would wait. In my opinion, I was completely justified in what I was doing, and I did not owe them an explanation. I also brought up everything that had happened in the past. How they had never believed that my brother was a horrible human being who was just as arrogant, and they had always treated me unfairly. Even now, they could not see the fact that my brother had specifically picked this time to ask them to join him for the vacation because he knew that he was more special to them, and if he could get my parents to skip my wedding, that would be the biggest win for him. That's exactly what happened. So my parents had proven to me once and for all that my brother was more important to them than me, and now they no longer had any right to question me about my decisions because I was done with them, and I was not going to be cast aside anymore. Then I was about to hang up, but my parents told me that apparently my brother had no idea that I was getting married around the same time, and said that if I had told them that I wanted them to be there at my wedding and that I wasn't ready to wait, then they would have declined the vacation and been with me instead. However, instead of being transparent with them, I decided to play mind games, and now I was acting like a victim in the situation even though I had created it for myself. I wasn't expecting that reaction from them, so I decided to speak to them a little more, and they told me that apparently they hadn't even told my brother that I was getting married, and since I hadn't invited the rest of my family, neither had they known. So he had no idea that I was getting married around the same time that he was going on vacation, and he had invited them without any ulterior motives. Apparently, they had only decided to speak to me because they knew that if they declined to go on vacation with my brother and his family, it would be unlikely that they would get an opportunity like this anytime soon in the future since my brother has been very busy ever since he started his own business. So that's why instead of just declining without talking to me, they decided to talk to me and asked me if I would be comfortable with the idea of postponing my wedding for a couple of weeks, and if I had said no and been honest with them, they would have declined the vacation and been there with me for the wedding. As for whatever had happened in the past, they told me that they were ready to accept that they had kind of been at fault for never acknowledging that maybe my brother could have been terrible to me and I might have been telling the truth. But I never helped the situation for myself because I always went out of my way to create trouble, seek attention in the most drastic ways, and try to be a nuisance in the family. So I couldn't exactly blame it all on them for not believing me when I tried to make it sound like my brother was always coming after me. And when they put it that way, I couldn't help but think that maybe they had a point. However, at that moment, I was in no mood to believe them, so I accused them of bluffing about whether my brother had known that I was getting married or not. Even if he had known, there was no way that my parents were going to tell me about it after I had accused him of doing this on purpose. And I argued with my parents and I told them that if they had really wanted to be present at my wedding, then they wouldn't even have asked me if I would be fine with postponing it, and they would have just been there for me, no questions asked. They wouldn't even have entertained the idea of going off on vacation with my brother and his family while abandoning me. I accused them of making up excuses to cover up their mistakes and trying to gaslight me into thinking that I was not the victim but the one who was at fault for the situation. I thought they were going to argue with me, but instead, they just told me that I still hadn't grown out of my old phase, and I was still the troublemaker who went out of my way to seek attention in the worst possible ways. Then they just hung up, and I could tell that they were very disappointed, and my mother had actually been crying because it had come as a huge shock to her that while she was on vacation, I had just posted a bunch of my wedding photos like it meant nothing. But even I was really upset and mad at them. I didn't even bother to think about anything from their perspective for the first couple of days. But now, the more that I think about the conversation that I had with my parents, the less confident I feel that I might have been in the right. At first, I was very sure of myself that I hadn't done anything wrong, but now I don't know anymore. Obviously, there's no way to prove whether my brother had known when I was getting married and whether he had done all of this on purpose or not, but I have a strong gut feeling that my parents must have told him that I was getting married around this time, and he had specifically picked this time to go on vacation with his family and invite my parents to accompany him. It was just too suspicious. But that's all I have to go on, my gut feeling, and I don't really know for a fact whether what I think is true or not. So, on the off chance that it's not, I guess I did mess up in a way. But that's the issue. I'm not sure of anything. I would still like to say that if my parents truly wanted to be there for me on my wedding day, they never would have even entertained the idea of going off on vacation with my brother and his family, and they wouldn't even have asked me to postpone my wedding. However, if I had spoken to them, then the situation might have turned out differently. I don't know. The only thing that I do know for sure is that they were right about one thing. I never made it easier for them to take my side when I was younger because I was definitely a troublemaker and a total brat. My brother had always been a goody two-shoes. No matter how much he bullied me in private, he always did his best in everything, and that's not something that I can take away from him. So maybe if I had put my energy into trying to be more like him, who knows, maybe my parents would have found it easier to be on my side. Anyway, I'm just really confused about everything, and I don't know if I owe my parents an apology. All my life, I've believed that my brother was treated better because my parents were biased toward him, but maybe I never made it for myself and maybe I'm not really the victim here. And even now, I'm not even sure if my brother had known about when the wedding was going to take place or not. I just don't know anything, so I desperately need some clarity. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents that I would wait for them to come back from vacation but getting married without them eventually? Update 1. So my parents returned from their vacation, and as soon as they landed, they came directly to my house from the airport. I know that because I could see their bags and stuff with them when they turned up in the cab. My wife and I have been married for a little over a week now, and we have discussed the situation with my parents several times. I've also gone through the comments, spoken to a bunch of my friends, and a lot of people are on my side, and a lot of other people also think that I could have avoided all of this drama. But the bottom line is that whatever damage had to be done has already been caused, and I don't think my parents can move on from this, nor can I. So I had pretty much given up any hope of reconciling with my parents, and honestly, I didn't even want to. It seemed pointless because all my life they had always preferred my brother over me, and even they themselves had not denied it when I brought it up during our last phone call. They had accepted it but also tried to blame me for it in the same breath. I had accepted that both of us had different opinions and maybe both of us were right or maybe all of us were wrong, but it didn't make a difference anymore. We couldn't take back whatever had happened, and that was how I had planned on dealing with the situation. But I guess my parents had different plans. When they showed up at my door, I was very confused because they still had their bags and stuff with them, and I thought that they were coming here to live with me, so that scared me a little bit. But later on, they clarified that they had to come directly to my house from the airport anyway. I had invited them in, and they skipped all the small talk and told me that, for my behavior, it was very obvious that we had a lot to talk about if we wanted our family to work. I didn't know what to say to that because I didn't really have any plans of discussing anything with them. I already knew that there would be no point, and we would get stuck talking in circles once again. So I tried to tell them that I needed some time and space away from them to get my thoughts in order. But they told me that they had made the effort to come directly to me after their vacation just because I was important to them, so I needed to treat them with the same importance, and we needed to talk about it now. I had already been pretty upset about everything that had been going on with my family ever since I had that fight with my parents, so I was really in no mood to speak to them, and when they insisted that I treat them with the same importance and play by their rules, I started getting really angry once again. So I snapped at them, and I told them that just because they were willing to speak to me right now didn't mean that I had to do the same for them. If they had really wanted to make things right with me, they should have respected what I said about wanting some time away from them and left me alone. Things could not always work on their terms, and they needed to realize that I was my own person, not their puppet. So that led to a shouting match because even they were pretty upset, and eventually my wife had to intervene and tell them to go home because there was no way that we would ever be able to come to a conclusion like this. Before they left, though, my mother, who has always been the more emotional parent, told me that she was aware of the fact that maybe she and my father had failed somewhere as parents because otherwise nobody would treat their parents like this. But she wanted me to remember that if they had failed as parents, even I had had some failures as their son. But they had always forgiven me and tried to make it work with me, and if they were important to me, I would try to do the same and put in an effort into making things right instead of constantly trying to prove that I am perfect and I'm always the victim while my family is the villain. I would have retaliated and said something to her as well, but like I said, she has always been the more emotional of my parents, and she had tears in her eyes, so I couldn't bring myself to say anything to her. After they left, my wife calmed me down because I was still pretty upset, and since then we have been trying to figure out a way to deal with this situation. But honestly, I'm at my wit's end right now. I don't want to villainize my parents, but I also don't think that I am the bad guy here. I'm inclined to blame my brother for creating the situation, but honestly, I still don't know if he had any part to play in it at all, and even if he did, it was ultimately my parents' decision to skip my wedding and join him on his family vacation. I feel like I'm back to square one once again now, with no idea what to do and how to deal with this problem at hand. Update 2. Before I get into this update, I just want to tell everyone who has been suggesting to just cut my parents off. It's not that easy. If it was, I wouldn't even be on this site and I would have already just done it. But families are complicated, and like I said, I really didn't have anybody apart from my parents, and it's not like they have always been bad to me. We have had some good times as well, and it's just a complicated situation that we are in right now. I can't say that I'm perfect, but neither can I say that for them. So the only two options that I have right now are to wait for things to get so bad that I have no other option but to cut them off, or talk it out with them and try to make it work, and I'm inclined to go with the second one because, well, I'm a sane person. Anyway, the last time that I met with my parents was 3 days ago, and it didn't really go well. After that, I had no idea what I was going to do, so I just thought that I would go back to my previous approach and keep things low-key with them, and my wife agreed with it because it's not like we have any better ideas on how to deal with it. But then last evening, my parents texted me, and they told me that they were sorry about how they had behaved the last time that we met, and that they shouldn't have instigated me and yelled at me. They should have just left me alone when I said that I didn't want to speak to them, and they were really sorry about whatever had happened. But they still wanted to make things work with me, so they wanted to ask me if I would be willing to meet them for dinner on the weekend. Now my wife and I are discussing that idea. It's definitely going to be awkward. We know that for sure because so much has happened in the past couple of weeks that there is no way that we can get through an entire evening without talking about it. But it seems to me like they are trying to make it up to me in some way, and I don't want to ruin my relationship with them, so I'm willing to give them a chance, and maybe by speaking to them, I might actually be able to salvage whatever is left of our relationship. It's very obvious that we have a lot of misunderstandings and miscommunication, which has created a lot of issues between me and my parents, but I don't want to lose them. I really just don't. So unless anything else comes up or something happens in the next couple of days, we are probably going to be seeing them this weekend and are going to try and talk it out with them. Wish us luck, and hopefully it'll go well with them. Update 3. So unfortunately, things did not exactly go well with my parents, and I regret even giving them the benefit of the doubt and going to them because when I showed up at their house last evening with my wife, my brother was there with his family. They know that I do not have a good relationship with my brother at all, and I think it was pretty nasty of them to spring it on me like a surprise. Regardless of what their intentions were, I was obviously very shocked to see him there, and I don't think he had been expecting me either, so they had lied to both of us. But as soon as I confronted them about it, they told me that most of the problems in our family stemmed from the fact that the two of us did not get along because I thought that my parents treated him better than they treated me, and he thought that I was a good-for-nothing loser, and he still had a grudge against me for attacking him 10 years ago, even though he totally deserved it. So the only solution that they could think of was to have me over for dinner and have us talk it out with each other. I instantly told them that I was only here to talk to them, but I had nothing to say to my brother, and for once in our lives, both of us seemed to be on the same page. Both of us started to leave, but once again, my mother started crying and said that she couldn't believe that both of her sons valued their own pride and ego more than they valued family. I was about to say something, but I guess my brother had finally had enough of this, and he told my mother that considering the fact that she was the one who had said yes to going on vacation with his family in spite of knowing that I was getting married around the same time, she should not be talking about family values at all. And then out of nowhere, he told me that our parents had been lying to me all along, and that he had actually known that I was getting married around the same time that he was going on vacation. The reason he had chosen to go on vacation around the same time was not because he wanted to ruin my wedding, but because he was apparently signing on a new project in a couple of weeks, and after that he would be too busy for vacations, so he wanted to get this out of the way while he could, and it had nothing to do with me in case that's what I believed. But my parents still had a choice, and they had chosen to go on vacation with him, and now they were throwing him under the bus and acting as if both of us were responsible for all the trouble. With that out of the way, I knew that there was no way that I could forgive my parents, and I guess things had finally come to a point of no return. I had the clarity of knowing that my parents had chosen to go on vacation with my brother and his family on purpose, and I didn't really care about what his intentions were. But what I cared about was the fact that they had a choice, and they sealed their fate, but then tried to lie their way out of it and were actually gaslighting me into thinking that I was somehow the bad guy here. Anyway, after that I walked out and blocked them everywhere, and I don't think that I will be getting back in touch with them anytime soon. My wife and I are pretty happy on our own, and we are even going on our honeymoon pretty soon. We were initially going to wait for a couple of months, but now I really need a break from all of this. Anyway, that's that, and I'm better off without my family. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Parents withdrew my college application from my dream school behind my back to protect my brother's feelings. So my grandparents decided to do this instead. Hi guys, so my parents recently received a terrible punishment for screwing me over, and I told them that they completely deserved every bit of it, and I'm not sorry for them at all. I kind of gloated about it, and I thought that I had earned it, but a couple of my friends have told me that that was completely unnecessary. I'm 17, male, and in a couple of weeks, I'm supposed to be starting college. I had applied to several business schools outside our state because I wanted to stay away from my parents as much as possible, and I didn't think that they were going to miss me either. I was right about that, but they still ended up going behind my back to withdraw my application from my college of choice, which I only found out about recently. And it was all because of my brother. Since he's an insecure and jealous brat and can't stand to see me happy or succeeding, he's been flunking out of school for the last couple of years, and no matter how hard he tries, he's always failing at something. I know what his problem is. It's just that he's more interested in how he appears to people and how the so-called cool kids perceive him rather than his academics. For some reason, my parents don't seem to see that. I have literally never seen my brother studying when he's at home, and that's part of the problem. But instead of trying to do something about that, my parents have taken him to a bunch of specialists in the past couple of months to find out whether he has any learning disabilities that are preventing him from doing well. This happened after his high school counselor had a talk with our parents and told them that he's been doing terribly at school and they need to do something about it. He's 2 years away from graduating and he needs to pull up his grades, or he will not be accepted into any half-decent colleges and get stuck in community college. And that's what got my parents involved, the idea of their darling son having to go to community college. I personally didn't care about that situation at all. My parents could come up with whatever excuse they wanted for their favorite son's failures. It's hardly my business. I was more interested in my future, in making sure that I got into a good business school so I could do well and stay away from my family. In order to make sure of that, I also applied to Stanford. Everyone knows that Stanford is a pretty big deal, and I had been hoping that I would get accepted because my grades are not that bad, and a couple of my friends had told me that they would expect me to get accepted, so I went for it. Even if I didn't get accepted, I would be fine with it because at least I had tried to get in. But I don't think my parents were fine with it because apparently a few days after I sent in my application, they sent an email pretending to be me and withdrew my application without my knowledge, so I wouldn't even stand a chance. Recently, I started hearing back from all the colleges that I had applied to, and I've been accepted into most of them, which is good news for me since when the time comes I'll have many options to choose from. But I was just a little put off by the fact that I hadn't received any response from Stanford at all. Usually, even if it's to reject somebody, at least they do send something. Strangely enough, I hadn't received any word, so I was beginning to get very iffy about it. I couldn't stay patient for much longer since my friends had started asking me about Stanford, and I couldn't exactly tell them that I hadn't heard back from them at all. When I tried checking, I couldn't find my application status on their admissions portal, and that's when I started thinking that this was getting weird. I even checked my email, including the spam section, and there was nothing. In the end, without any other options left, I decided to call the admissions office to check out what was going on because I thought there must have been some glitch. Later on, they called me back and told me that I had withdrawn my application by email, and that's why they hadn't bothered to reach out to me. Because of that, I refused to believe it at first because I thought that was impossible. So I told them that there must have been some confusion because I specifically remember having applied, and they told me that they had received an email to withdraw my application days after I had applied, and that's why they had canceled it. They couldn't speak to me for long because obviously they had work to get to, so I had to spend the entire day in shock. I kept trying to find something to explain what just happened, but there was nothing. In the end, I had to accept the unpleasant reality that somebody else had sabotaged me. At first, my mind only went to my brother because I couldn't imagine anybody else who would be so jealous of me that they would try to do something like this. But his behavior didn't seem to be any different around me. He was still cocky and arrogant and really annoying, but I knew that if he had done something like this, he would be trying to rub it in my face, and he wasn't doing that, so I had my doubts about whether he was actually the culprit. But a couple of days after I learned what had happened, I decided to confront him because I was going crazy not knowing the truth. When I went into his room to ask him about it, he just looked really confused, and I thought that was genuine. But I don't trust him at all, so I decided to try and grill him, and he got annoyed and he started yelling at me, telling me that he didn't even know how to access my email, and if he had known, he would have probably withdrawn from every college that I had applied to, so I would not have any options either, and I wouldn't be prancing around the house constantly celebrating all acceptance emails. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way, especially since I was already really upset with whatever had happened. So I started yelling at him, and soon enough we were fighting, and I mean a physical fight. As soon as our parents heard yelling, they came to his room to break us apart. But I don't know what had gotten into me. I started acting completely psychotic. Maybe it was the fact that somebody had sabotaged me on purpose, because things like this don't just happen on their own, and I was feeling very frustrated, and I guess I was trying to take it out on him. My parents were trying really hard to stop me from trying to beat him up, but I was being totally vicious, and eventually my dad had to hold me back. My mom told me that it was they who had withdrawn my application and not my brother. That was when I completely froze and stopped trying to beat my brother up because it was totally unexpected. I felt betrayed, hurt, and blindsided all at once, and nobody in the room even knew what to do. For a couple of seconds, all of us just stood there silently because I was trying to think of something to say to them and process my feelings, but there was nothing that I wanted to say. I was literally in shock, and when I did not say anything, my mom started trying to explain what had happened. She had already started crying, and she told me that she and my dad had always had access to my email because before I got my personal laptop, I used to do everything on my dad's laptop. When I got my own, I guess I should have logged out from everyone else, but I forgot because at the time it did not seem important. When I started to apply to colleges, it was around the time that my brother's high school counselor had told my parents that he needed to do something about his grades or he wouldn't have any choice but to go to community college. Eventually, it was quite bad because she had also compared him to me, since we went to the same high school, and told our parents that I wanted to go to business school. I had several options, but when the time came, my brother wouldn't be able to have the same options. She had advised my parents to have my brother speak to me so he would be able to get on the same track academically and do better, and even asked them to have me tutor my brother. Obviously, it was well-intentioned on her part, and she was just trying to look out for my brother since she had no idea that he and I had such a terrible equation. But my parents took it the other way, and they started thinking about how negatively it must impact my brother to know that I was doing so much better than him, and they started to think that maybe it was the pressure of having to outperform me or at least be equal to me that was getting to him. So they had been quite worried about him, and my dad had suggested the idea of going through my email and checking out what colleges I was applying to, since I had never spoken to them about it, just to make sure that these colleges were all on a normal and achievable level and wouldn't make my brother feel even more inferior to me. Most of them were, but then they noticed that I had also applied to Stanford, and they immediately realized that if I got accepted, it would probably ruin my brother's mental health since then he would always end up getting compared to me, his high-achieving older brother who went to Stanford and got a degree in business. So they thought about it for a couple of days, and then my mom suggested that maybe they could withdraw without me even knowing, since they had access to my email so they knew my application ID and stuff. It would be quite sly and unethical, but she thought that at least it would help the situation since then my brother wouldn't have to deal with the shame of doing badly in comparison to me. So then they threw around that idea for a couple of more days, and eventually my parents decided that this would be the best thing to do for our family and withdrew my application. Since it was still in the application stage, they only followed up electronically by sending a confirmation mail to make sure that I actually wanted to withdraw, and my parents did it all on my behalf. They made sure not to leave a paper trail by deleting all of those emails, and they got lucky that I didn't check the application portal since I had assumed that any further communication would be conducted by email. That's how it's usually done, and also I was busy with my finals and stuff. I had also applied to a bunch of other colleges, and I wasn't overly confident enough to just assume that I would get into Stanford so easily and had been applying to other colleges as well, and those applications also took time, so I had been pretty overwhelmed for the past couple of months, and unfortunately I hadn't checked the portal when I should have, because then I might have been able to find out that I had been sabotaged by my own parents. Now it was too late for me to do anything apart from just think about how heartless these people were. After my mom told me everything, she and my dad tried to come to my side to comfort me, and even my brother looked shocked. They tried to talk to me and tell me that they were really sorry about everything, but at the time they had just been too preoccupied with my brother and hadn't thought about the consequences of what they were doing. And even now that I knew everything, they were sorry about it, but they still believed that my getting into Stanford would have been terrible for my brother's mental health. But I wasn't interested in their apologies. I had heard enough, so I shook them off and went back into my room. Then I locked myself in and started packing because I couldn't spend one more minute in that house with them. They kept trying to get me to come out of the room, but I was not going to do any of that. Once I was done packing all the stuff that I could carry, I called myself a cab and ignored my parents while they tried to talk to me as I made my way outside the house and got into the cab so I could head over to my grandparents' place. My dad's parents live closer while my maternal grandparents live slightly far away, so I decided to go to my paternal grandparents' house. As soon as I was there, I told him everything and I told them that I didn't want to go back home. They had always known that things were not great at home for me since my parents always seemed to prefer my brother over me. But this was extreme, and my grandpa lost it when I told him what had happened. My grandma tried to comfort me because whenever I was at their place, I finally allowed myself to cry, and while I was crying, my grandpa was yelling at my parents in the other room. I could tell that even on the phone they were trying to defend their decision, but my grandpa was not having any of it, and he really tore into them. A couple of minutes after that, I heard him speaking to somebody else on the phone, but this time he was speaking much more civilly and normally and was explaining the situation. When he finally came back to the living room, he also joined my grandma and sat by my side to comfort me. By then, I had gotten a hold of myself and wasn't crying anymore, so my grandpa told me that my other grandparents would be arriving the next day, and then all of them would decide what was going to happen. He also reassured me and told me that I didn't need to worry because he was going to sort out everything for me. I wasn't sure what that was supposed to mean, but I was too tired to question anything, so I let it go. The next day, my other grandparents also arrived, and we were all in the same place. Once they were there, they also consoled me and told me that they were going to try their best to fix the situation for me. Obviously, it was going to be impossible for them to get me into Stanford now, but they told me that whatever expenses I had, my college tuition and other living expenses, they would cover all of it. That was a huge deal because college is pretty expensive, and my parents had told me right in the beginning that I would either have to work through college or get a student loan, and I had decided that I was going to take out a loan with a little help from my parents and maybe work in my free time so I would be able to pay it off eventually. It had been made very clear to both me and my brother that my parents were not going to pay for us to go to college, and I guess that was the only fair thing they had done in their entire lives because no matter how much they loved my brother, they weren't going to pay for him either. But judging by his grades, I don't think they have to worry about that since he might not even end up in college anyway. My grandparents told me that they would cover everything, and I was thrilled, but there was more to come. Apparently, they had discussed all of this some more while I had been sleeping the previous night and had decided that what my parents had done was so unacceptable and extreme that they didn't even want to keep in touch with them anymore. So my grandparents were going to speak to their respective lawyers and name me as the only heir to their inheritance. That blew my mind because I really hadn't seen that coming. I didn't even know what to say to them or how to thank them, but I still tried, and they told me that I didn't have to because after everything that I have been through my entire life, they are the ones who should be apologizing to me that they couldn't raise better kids who would be good parents to me. Even though I was in a better mood, my grandparents seemed slightly upset, and I could tell that they were really disappointed by my parents, probably even more than me. But I still thanked them as much as I could because this was a huge deal for me, and I tried to act all cheery around them, and it seemed to make them feel better as well. All of this happened about 3 days ago, and I have been living with my grandparents ever since. My parents had tried to stop me while I was leaving, but after I left, they didn't try to contact me. My other grandparents are also here, and we are all living together for a while, but my mom's parents are going to be leaving by the end of this week. They were only here to make sure that I was doing fine, and now that they know that I'm okay, they're going to go back home. Last evening, my parents' family reached out to me, but it was not to apologize. It was to start blaming me for being a snitch, since apparently a couple of hours before they called me, my grandparents had all collectively reached out to them and told them that they were very disappointed in how my parents had behaved and wanted nothing to do with them anymore. They had also told my parents that they were going to remove them from their respective wills and had already spoken to their lawyers, so they were going to start the process pretty soon, and I was going to be inheriting a loan since I deserved it way more than they ever would. My parents were acting all apologetic about what they had done up until a couple of days ago when I had initially found out, but their true colors started showing last evening. They started being vicious and really mean and said that I needed to speak to my grandparents and fix what I had done because there was no way that they were going to allow me to walk away with all the inheritance. And that's when I started gloating. I told them that they totally deserved this and they had brought this on to themselves. So I was really glad that my grandparents had made this decision to cut them out of not only their life but also their inheritance. I told them that my grandparents were also going to be paying for me to go to college, and they could continue to baby my brother, but it was very unlikely that he would end up in any good places, so their retirement funds would remain untouched since they wouldn't have to worry about him going away to college. I then said that they didn't need to be upset because if they needed help in their old age, I would be more than willing to put them in touch with charities willing to help out the destitute, since I was sure that all their own money was going to go into supporting my brother for the rest of his life, and it's not like they have an inheritance to count on anymore, so they had better start saving up or wait for me to put them in touch with charity organizations. I guess that was the last straw for them because after that they started yelling at me incoherently, and I couldn't even figure out what they were saying since they were mostly just cussing at me. So I hung up and blocked them, and it was very satisfying for me. But then I made the mistake of telling a few of my friends about it because I thought that they would be on my side because they knew everything, but instead they told me that there was no reason for me to say all of that and I could have just accepted my win and moved on with dignity. I ended up getting into an argument with them, and now I feel kind of bad about it. I don't think my grandparents know about any of this yet because they haven't said anything, but I'm scared to bring it up with them because I don't want to make it seem like I was being cocky. I'm confused about what to do or feel right now. So, ITA for gloating in front of my parents now that I know that all their inheritance is going to be mine. Edit. I do not have a good relationship with my brother. Never have and never will. I know for a fact that it was my parents who have been responsible for always being biased towards him and treating him differently, but he is no less of a brat himself. He's a complete wannabe and a bit of a bully at school, which is pretty embarrassing for me. He has never been nice to me ever since we were kids, and that's why I've had bad blood with him as well as my parents. Now, getting into why my grandparents had never bothered to rescue me from my parents and get me to live with them instead. That's because there was nothing to rescue me from. They couldn't legally do anything about how my parents were treating me because it's not like they were neglecting me or isolating me, and at times they were actually even nice to me, but we just had a very complicated and strained relationship. In cases like mine, kids just have to make peace with the situation because there's not much else that can be done. So for everyone who had been saying that my grandparents should have fought for my custody when I was younger and raised me themselves, I don't think it would have been possible since no court would entertain something like this, and I don't think my parents would have wanted to give up my custody either because it would have been a bad look for them. So if they didn't want to give it up, there was no way that my grandparents could have done anything. I myself did not think about moving out until recently when things got too bad to still continue living with my parents because I had just accepted my fate and was waiting for college to start so I could move away. I hope this explains everything regarding why I've been so against my brother this entire time and why I didn't move out until recently, since most people had a lot of questions about this. Date 1. Hi, so after giving it a lot of thought and going through the comments, I have decided that I don't owe my friends any explanation. Most of them have come from really good homes and have been treated well, so they have no idea what I have been through in my life. If I want to gloat about something, I'm going to do it. I've earned this for myself by putting up with my parents all my life, and I don't care what they think about it. Besides, for that, it was not even as if I had called my parents up. They were the ones who had done it, and I just responded to them in the same tone that they were talking to me. It's not wrong, and I refuse to be sorry about any of that. Today, I even spoke to my grandparents about it, and they told me that I should have just ignored that phone call and blocked them, but they didn't seem to mind the fact that I had been so rude with my parents. After all, they had earned this thanks to their behavior. It has been 3 days since the phone call, and I haven't yet received any other messages from them. So I'm hoping that they don't reach out anymore. My maternal grandparents left to go home today, and I was kind of sad to see them go because I don't really get to see them as often. But they told me that they would be back soon and all 4 of them would go with me to drop me off at college when I finally start. So that's nice and I can't wait. Update 2. Hi, so 2 days ago I posted my last update, and I guess I spoke too soon about my parents leaving me alone. Today they showed up at my house, probably because they were not ready to give up on the inheritance so easily. But they are so stupid that they don't even realize that they can't storm in and demand things like that, especially after what they have done. They should have been apologetic and acting sorry about what they had done. Even if they didn't really mean it, But instead they had a terrible attitude and started fighting with my grandparents as soon as they showed up at the door. When they saw me in the back telling my grandparents to just shut the door and let this go, my mom addressed me directly by calling me a cuss word and then told me that I was a selfish brat for snitching on them, especially over something like this. She went on to say that it wasn't even as though I was good enough to actually qualify for Stanford, so I needed to stop acting like the victim. I flared up when she said that because it was still a sore spot for me. I hadn't wanted to interact with them, but I ended up screaming at her, and I told her that I might have gotten in if she and my father had actually allowed me that chance. But thanks to their insecurities, I didn't even get that chance. When my grandparents realized that I was getting agitated, they shut the door and told my parents to leave or else they would call the cops. But my parents still stood outside the door and continued to yell about how unfair all of this was, and my dad especially kept trying to talk to his parents and even tried to throw me under the bus, saying that they knew for a fact that if I ever got to Stanford, I would never shut up about it, and that would have affected my brother's mental health negatively, so they were only trying to look out for their family and keep everything balanced, as if that was a valid reason to have done what they did. After a while, my grandpa got really mad and turned on the sprinklers, and only then did my parents finally go away. My grandpa has reassured me that after this, if my parents tried to show up again, he would definitely just call the cops and leave them to deal with it, so I don't need to worry about it anymore, and I feel kind of better because at least I got it out of my system, even though I could have just avoided any interaction with them. But it's done now, so fine. Update 3. Hi everyone, so it's been a couple of months since I last had any interaction with my parents, and I remember my grandpa telling me that they had tried to show up again once to argue with my grandparents, but that time he had actually called the cops and had them removed. I was not at home at the time. I was out with a couple of friends, not the ones who had criticized me. I'm not in touch with them anymore, and I'm fine with it. I realize that life gets much better and easier when you cut out the people that you don't want to be in touch with and the ones who don't care about you or your well-being. I'm only in touch with a handful of friends at the moment, and of course my grandparents. Most of the extended family is not speaking to my parents anymore since they know that we have had a falling out, and even though most people don't even know what actually happened, they know that they don't want to be on whichever side my parents are on. I started college 3 weeks ago, and it's been great. I've made a lot of new friends, and the classes are interesting. I know it's going to be a lot of work, but I'm willing to put in that hard work and make my future better. Especially so that I can eventually do something for my grandparents because the way they have looked out for me is commendable. Right now, things are great, and even though I'm not in Stanford, I'm still in a pretty good college, and that works because I know that I'm going to make the best of my situation. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Fiancé cheated with my brother on our engagement day, so I left and cut them off. Now they are in a coma after an accident, and my parents want me to do this. 4 days ago, my family got back in touch with me after 2 years of no contact. My fiancé had cheated on me with my brother on the day of my engagement, and it had turned into a huge mess, so I had to cut them off. For context, my fiancé, my brother, and I all went to school together and have known each other for a really long time. Kim, my fiancé, was in the same year as us, and Ron, my brother, was just 2 years behind. Ron and I used to be very close when we were younger, so we were kind of part of the same friend circle, and that meant that he was also friends with Kim. I asked him to be my prom date in my senior year, and after that, we started dating. We even ended up in the same college, so we had been together for almost 7 years when I asked her to marry me. She said yes, and we got engaged. I hosted a party the day itself with only our families and a couple of really close friends coming over in the evening to celebrate the big news before we announced it on social media. I was too busy celebrating what had happened to myself to notice anything that was going on around me. So, I didn't see Ron looking really upset and trying hard to put on a happy face. Neither did I notice him leave to have a smoke in the backyard, nor did I realize that when Kim had excused herself to use the L, she had been gone for almost 15 minutes. But all of a sudden, when I realized that Kim had been gone for more than 10 minutes, I decided to check up on her and I headed to the L. To my surprise, she was not there, and my gut told me that I should check the backyard. And I was saved from a terrible marriage because when I peeped into the backyard, I saw my brother making out with my fiancée. I had already been getting a terrible gut feeling when both of them left the room one after the other, and seeing that kind of sent me into shock. I froze for a couple of seconds before I finally reacted and yelled at them, which finally made them break apart. They tried to act innocent, which was obviously pointless. I had seen what they were up to, and I knew the truth. I started to walk back inside the house, and I was feeling so many things at once. I don't even remember exactly what they were trying to say to me. I just remembered that they were trying to talk to me, but I had completely zoned out, and I wasn't even listening to them. I walked into the living room with them behind me, and without even waiting for them to say anything, I announced what I had seen, and I told our families that the engagement was unfortunately off because Kim was a nasty cheater and Ron had no sense of loyalty. Kim started crying and Ron was trying to comfort her. And the sight of that upset me so much that I told both of them to get out of my house. At the time, Kim and I had been living together, but it was my name on the lease agreement. We used to split the rent, so she tried to argue with me and said that she was not going to go anywhere because she hadn't done anything wrong. Now, naturally, that came as a shock to me because I think that making out with your fiancé's brother is pretty much the definition of wrong. But she went on to explain that she had only said yes to going out with me when we were in high school because she needed a date for prom, and even when she was in college, she had believed that she loved me, but she didn't really. In the past couple of years after we had graduated, she had realized that she had feelings for Ron and not me. Apparently, living with me had made her realize that our relationship would never work because we were just too different. She thought that I was a workaholic who did not know how to have fun and I was way too controlling and possessive. I honestly had no idea what she was talking about because I work a normal amount and I really don't prioritize work over my personal life. As for having fun, I don't even know what that means because in my opinion, I'm plenty of fun. I don't even want to get into what she was saying about me being controlling and possessive because I don't think I was that way with her at any point. But I think she just wanted a reason to break up with me, so she had come up with a bunch of those in her own head and had started validating them herself. Anyway, she went on to tell me that she had been talking to Ron about her problems with me for a couple of years, and she had slowly started falling for him. In fact, they hadn't been together, but getting engaged just made her realize that she couldn't do this. And when she saw that even Ron seemed pretty upset and actually had to leave the room, she took that as a sign and went after him in the backyard. They had spoken about their feelings for each other, and only after the confession had they kissed for the first time. They said that the only reason both of them had been holding back for so long was because she and I had been together for so long that neither of them wanted to hurt me. That was the only reason Kim had agreed to marry me, because she didn't think that Ron would make a move on her since he loved his brother. And Ron had been thinking along similar lines, that maybe he never had a chance with Kim because she loved me a lot, even though she did complain about me to him constantly. But after they had spoken to each other in the backyard, they realized that her engagement with me was never going to work because she was in love with him and so was he. And now Kim wanted to break her engagement off with me and try to have a real relationship with my brother. Both our families and a few friends that we had invited were shocked, and I felt humiliated that this was happening. But there was no choice. Her parents, thankfully, seemed to be reasonable people and apologized to me for what their daughter had done and told her that she was free to do whatever she wanted. But for now they really didn't want to speak to her. My parents, on the other hand, turned out to be the worst parents on earth because they actually started supporting the two of them. They tried to explain to me that it was completely natural for Kim to fall out of love with me and that I shouldn't take it too hard since these things happen and all I could do was try and move on. In fact, they even expected me to be supportive of the relationship between Kim and Ron. Now, when I tried to make them realize how ridiculous they sounded, they just got exasperated and told me that I always had been a difficult person to deal with, so it was not very surprising that Kim had decided to go with Ron, who was much more easygoing than me. They told me that I was too tightly wound, and they had known that the relationship with Kim was not going to last since she was the exact opposite of me and had always been more like my brother. And both of them seemed to agree with it, so I started to think that maybe my entire family had lost their minds. Anyway, I was so upset that I didn't feel like spending any more time with them trying to argue and explain what I was feeling. All they wanted to do was celebrate the fact that Kim and Ron were finally together because I guess my parents had known that he had feelings for her, and they were trying really hard to make me feel like I was somehow responsible for my own relationship falling apart and acting like whatever Kim had said about me was true, so I guess that justifies whatever she had done. At least my friends seemed to be on my side, and they helped me pack a few of my things, and one of them let me spend the next couple of weeks with them since I didn't want to go home. Now I guess I could say that after the day of the engagement, I didn't have to see any of them ever again, but that wouldn't be true. I had to go back several times to gather my things since I had been living in that house for a really long time, pretty much ever since I graduated, and one evening was not enough to get all my things. She returned the money that I had paid for rent that month, and every time I would go to collect my things over the next few weeks, Ron was always there with her, and it just upset me to no end. Anyway, after I had collected my things and she had returned the money and the ring, I decided to cut ties with them. I'd been in touch with my parents on and off for a few weeks, and I couldn't believe that they were actually supportive of what Ron had done. They told me that if Kim was not happy with me, it was completely up to her what she wanted to do and who she wanted to be with. And if it was Ron that she wanted to be with, it was not exactly wrong of him to take her up on that offer. If they loved each other, it didn't matter if she had cheated on me or if he had betrayed me. They belonged together, and they were going to be supportive of the relationship no matter how I felt and no matter how much I denied it. They continued to bring up whatever Kim had said about me being controlling, possessive, never having enough time for her, and not knowing how to have fun. It had come to a stage where I had actually started questioning whether any of those things were true. So, I spoke to a couple of my friends, and these were people who had always been honest with me since we had been friends from school. They have known me and Kim for a really long time, so I could count on them to be honest with me, and they told me that whatever she had said was a bunch of baloney and she was only coming up with that stuff to justify her affair. I worked a reasonable amount, they confirmed it, and I cared about my work just as any other person does, not more and certainly not less, and I was quite a fun person to be around. Maybe I wasn't always the life of the party like my brother was, but that didn't matter because I knew how to let loose, and that was all besides the point. Things like that shouldn't even matter in a relationship. It wasn't like her life had become boring or difficult because of me. As for controlling and possessive, my friends vehemently denied that, and it just made me believe it even more firmly that my family and Kim were just trying to gaslight me into believing that I was all of these things and that's why I deserved to be left the way that I had been. But eventually I stopped seeing them and I managed to cut my family out of my life as well. I heard from a few friends that Ron and Kim had married each other in a private and intimate ceremony about a year after we had separated. And I honestly didn't even feel anything. One more year has passed since then, and for almost 2 years, I've had no contact with my family. I've achieved a lot in life, traveling a lot, and so I don't even feel like I've missed out on anything. However, last week my mother called me up, and at first I declined and even blocked the number that she had been calling me from, but that did not stop her. She started using another number, and when I realized that it was her, I still did not pick up. She kept trying to, and after almost 4 hours, I decided to answer the call because she hadn't stopped calling every other minute. I was quite irritable, but when I called her back, I heard her crying on the other end, and I was very confused because I had no idea what she was sobbing about. So instead of yelling at her like I had planned, I decided to ask her what was going on, and she told me that apparently my brother and Kim had been in an accident, and both of them had slipped into a coma. The accident had been terrible. A truck had plowed into them, and the two of them were in a terrible condition. I'm not even kidding, I felt really sorry for them, and I told my mother to hang in there because whatever they had done to me, this was something really horrible, and I definitely hadn't been expecting something like this. My mother couldn't stop crying on the phone, so she had to give it to my dad, who was a little calmer and told me that they were calling to ask me to visit them, so they would have some sort of support during this time. I didn't even understand what they meant by some sort of support, because both Ron and Kim had health insurance, so it's not like they needed my money. As for emotional support, they had each other, and I'm not sure what I could be there for. And to be honest, they haven't been in touch with me for the past 2 years, so I didn't understand why they wanted me to be there for them all of a sudden. But a couple of minutes later, my dad clarified what he meant, and I'm still reeling from the shock of it. Apparently, they wanted me to support them by babysitting Kim and Ron's 2-month-old son. The whole pregnancy journey had been a well-kept secret, made easier by the fact that Kim and Ron had been in Oklahoma during the pregnancy. He had been working on a project there when they found out and decided to stay there for the entire duration of the pregnancy and birth there as well. They had friends and a couple of family members there as well, so it was all good, and their family had even flown down to be there for the birth of the baby. Everything had been kept private on purpose because that's what Kim and Ron wanted, and they had only come back a couple of weeks ago so they could let everyone know. But now they were in the hospital after this terrible accident. I honestly felt numb after learning this and didn't know how to react. But my dad told me that for now they had hired a sitter to look after the baby, but they needed to think about something long-term as well. Apparently, they had spoken to the medical team, and Kim and Ron had been given 50-50 chances of survival, so my dad had called me to say that just in case something were to happen to them, they wanted me to help raise the baby. He thought that this was the most valid way to deal with the situation, so he wanted me to come see the baby and at least try to create a bond with him. I thought that was a ridiculous expectation to have from me, and I instantly told him that I was not going to do anything of this sort. Literally everything about his suggestion was incredibly problematic, and I did not want to be a part of it. But instead of accepting that, he started yelling at me and said that I was being stupid and selfish and that right now things are not about me, but about Kim and Ron, because they are literally in a coma and I need to think about them before declining. He said that the family needs me right now, and most importantly, my nephew needs me, so I need to be there for everyone instead of holding on to old grudges. But it's not like I declined because of any grudges. I declined because it's just weird. I don't want to have to build a relationship with my nephew under circumstances like this. I didn't even know I had a nephew until a couple of days ago, and all of a sudden I'm expected to step up and start taking care of him like he was my own and think about taking care of him in the future as well, just in case anything happens to his parents. His parents are another story altogether, and I don't even want to get into that right now. But the bottom line is, I just don't want to see anyone from the family right now because my feelings are a mess, and I really don't think that I want to be put in a situation where I have to try and build a relationship with a kid where his chances of being orphaned are 50-50 right now. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm just not willing to see anyone right now. And my parents have been saying that this isn't fair and insisting that I need to come to the hospital to see my nephew and be there for everyone. It's been making me feel like a total jerk, and I really don't know what to do right now. Am I the jerk for not wanting to go see my nephew while his parents are in the hospital? Update 1. So, thank you so much for all the comments and advice. I really don't have an answer as to why they wanted to keep the pregnancy a secret from everyone. I guess they just wanted some privacy at the time. Regardless of that, I was kind of shocked. It's only been a couple of years since we broke up, and now they're married with a kid. I guess it just took me a little while to process that news, but I've accepted it now, and I think that the best thing for me to do right now would be to stay away. I know that this is not about me, that they have been in an accident and they are in the hospital right now, and honestly, all my prayers and good wishes go out to them. I really honestly hope that they recover fully well and are able to come back to life because my parents need them. Their child needs them, and I'm sure that things will work out. But I need to think about my own mental health as well, and I really don't think that taking up the responsibility of my nephew is going to make it any better, especially considering the fact that his mother used to be the love of my life at some point. So, I really don't think it's a good idea for me to try and build a relationship with him, and I honestly don't even know if his parents would have wanted that. Most of the comments here validated my decision not to go meet them or see them right now because it's not like I have to. They have people looking out for them. I don't, so I have to have my own back right now. I haven't been responding to any of the phone calls and messages from my parents right now because I don't even know what to tell them. I've tried explaining my side to them, but they just don't get it. I don't think they're even capable of understanding what I'm going through or what I went through 2 years back, so it's pretty pointless to talk to them, and I've decided that I'm going to keep ignoring them until I absolutely can't. I have a life and work of my own to attend to as well, so I'm hoping that it will keep me distracted enough from whatever is going on that side of the family. Update 2. My parents decided to pay me a visit today. I've been ignoring them for the past 2 weeks, and I guess they just couldn't take it anymore. It's the weekend right now, so I couldn't even escape to work, and I had to speak to them. At least something productive came out of the discussion, so I'm happy that it happened, but not really happy about the way things went down. They showed up in the morning, and I had to let them in, and they didn't even bother with any small talk before jumping to the purpose of their visit. They said that they had noticed that I had been ignoring them, but now that they were here, I couldn't do that anymore. They demanded answers for my behavior and said that it was really selfish of me to leave them to deal with what was going on in the family without even bothering to check up on them. It was their belief that what had happened with me 2 years back with Kim and Ron was not right, but they loved each other, and I couldn't have prevented that from taking place anyway. They told me that I should have been grateful that I found out about their feelings for each other on the day of engagement itself and not after we had already gotten married. So they did not see any reason to feel sorry about supporting my brother and Kim. They also said that even if I felt like they had betrayed me, I still shouldn't be behaving like this because it's bad enough that my brother and Kim have been in an accident, and the last thing that the family needs is for me to be so selfish and heartless that I don't even forgive them after they have gone through something so terrible. I was kind of shocked that they were making it sound like that. Like I should just forgive them because they had been in an accident and that was their karma, which is why I don't need to bother anymore. I'm not sure that that's how things work, but I didn't say anything to them and let them speak without any interruptions. I was saving everything that I had to say until the end because I honestly don't think that interrupting them and turning the situation into a shouting match would have helped. So, I should take it as a sign to at least try and make things right with them because right now there's no telling what might happen, and the doctors have still asked us to hold out, and they believe that I can start by trying to build a relationship with my nephew just in case I have to take over. That is what really irked me at that point. I finally interrupted them and said that even if in a hypothetical situation I agreed to take over, as they say, it would still be really weird if I decided to visit the baby and try and build a relationship with my nephew, and then all of a sudden Kim and Ron started getting better and decided that they did not want me around the baby anymore. Then where would I be? I would already get attached to the baby, and then that would be ripped away from me. And on top of that, it was weird that my parents were acting like Kim and Ron were already gone. The doctors had given them a 50-50 chance of survival, so even if there was a 50% chance of them surviving and making it, I think the family should have some hope instead of spending time with their kids at the hospital. They were here wasting their time arguing with me, and I didn't even see the sense of why they were doing this. So, I told them that it would be better for them to go back to the hospital and actually do something productive with their time. But they seemed to be offended at the implication that they were wasting that time and said that they had only approached me because they thought that I was the only person who would be able to take great care of my nephew just like my brother had done. And they told me that when Kim and Ron came around and found out that I had bothered to come to see them and build a relationship with my nephew, they would have been happy. They did say that, but they didn't sound too confident by saying it, and they shouldn't have because we haven't spoken for the past 2 years, and we ended on a terrible note. They have never seemed apologetic for their actions, and I highly doubt that they would be happy if I tried to build a relationship with their baby. Anyway, I told my parents that my final decision was that I was not going to go see them, at least not right now. I still needed some time to think about what I was feeling, and I knew that nobody cared about my feelings, but I did. I had stayed out of their life and never bothered them, so now it was time for them to respect my feelings and do the same for me. I thought that they were going to argue again after that, but luckily they seemed to understand what I was getting at and just gave up. They still told me that they would be waiting for me to show up, but I told them not to hold out much hope. I did say that I hoped and prayed that Kim and Ron would be able to make a full recovery soon enough because I really do, and I didn't want to come off as insensitive, so I felt like it was necessary for me to say that. I even handed over a box of chocolates that I had bought a couple of days ago. I had thought that I would gift it to a friend of mine who had helped me out with something, but at that moment, I thought that it would be better for me to hand it over to them for Kim and Ron. I told them that this was the best I could do for them and that my parents should give them this box when they came around, but that's as far as I was willing to go. Anyway, they're gone now and I feel a lot lighter, so I guess I needed this at some point. Update 3. So, it has been almost 6 months since I last posted here, and I feel like I owe everyone an update. I know everybody wants to hear about what happened with Kim and Ron, and here's the deal. They survived, thankfully. About a couple of weeks after my parents visited me, they started stirring, and they were able to make a full recovery eventually. I had actually bothered to go to see them in the hospital before they started coming to their senses, and I had even met my nephew. It was very difficult for me to see them in that condition, and it was even more difficult for me to see my nephew, but I did it, and I guess it just gave me some sense of closure that I didn't have for so long, so I'm grateful that I did what I did. And a few months ago, my brother and Kim even texted me to let me know that they were very thankful that I had come to see them and met my nephew as well. After almost 2 years, they finally apologized to me and said that they wish things could have turned out differently between us. But it's fine with me now because I've moved on. I wouldn't say that I have forgiven them. That would not be true, and I don't think I even have it in me to forgive them. But I have come to accept whatever has happened, and I guess that's the best that I can do, and it's the best that they should be expecting from me, so I guess we're all fine with that. Anyway, I told them that it was fine, and since then we haven't exactly spoken, and I'm fine with it. That's how I want things to be, and I'm happy enough without my family in my life. I also started seeing somebody recently, and this time it's pretty serious. I have had a couple of flings and casual relationships in the past after my breakup with Kim, but I guess this is the first time that I've actually had such strong feelings, and I think it will work out well this time, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I'm hopeful for the future. Thank you so much for bothering to keep up with my life. That means a lot to me. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My name is Steven, 31, and I've been with my fiancée, Lynn, 28, for 2 years. We've been engaged for 6 months. My younger brother, Wesley, 29, lives around 15 minutes from us. Our mother, Nancy, 55, has always been intense, but she has recently been acting strangely with Lynn. It began with Mom making odd comments about Wesley's gym success or how some women simply need a more physically present male. I work 50 to 60 hours per week to provide for our future, and Wesley works as a personal trainer. Nothing wrong with it, but Mom treats him like he's a Greek god. Last month, I noticed Lynn acting differently during family dinners, more silent and checking her phone more frequently. I dismissed it as wedding planning stress. Things went horribly wrong yesterday. Mom invited Lynn over to discuss wedding plans while I was supposed to be at work. My crew finished early, so I decided to surprise them. I drove up to Mom's house and pushed open the window. I overheard everything. Mom was in full manipulation mode. Lynn, honey, I'm telling you this because I care. Steven's just like his father, always working, never home. Wesley could give you the attention you deserve. He's asked about you, you know. He says he sees how lonely you are. Lynn's response made my blood turn cold. Nancy, I don't know. Steven's been distant lately. Mom intervened. He's the stronger man. You need a real husband. Someone who will be there, not just provide a paycheck. Wesley could give you that passionate life you deserve. I stood frozen. Lynn then stated something that shocked me. Wesley has been texting me. Nothing inappropriate. That was when I walked in. The expressions on their faces. Mom had the guts to smile, as if she were doing me a favor. Lynn became white as a sheet. I did not yell. I did not need to. I simply looked at Mom and said, "So this is what wedding planning looks like?" Mom straightened up, feeling righteous. Someone had to say something. You're never home, always at work. Wesley. I cut her off. Wesley this, Wesley that. Really funny how you never mentioned the 3 failed relationships he's had this year alone. Lynn attempted to explain. Steven, it's not what you think. Let me see your phone, I requested. There was no more sound. If nothing is inappropriate, show me the texts. She gripped her phone closer. Mom started screaming about how I was being controlling, how I didn't trust Lynn, and how Wesley would never demand to see someone's phone. Rich coming from the lady who reads her father's emails just to make sure. I walked out. Lynn followed me to the driveway, crying about how confused she was and how her mother had gotten into her head. She vowed to delete Wesley's phone number as if it mattered. I got home to find 6 missed calls from Wesley. He texted me, "We need to talk, bro." We sure do. Mom has been blowing up my phone all day, obviously being paranoid. It's costing me a nice woman. Dad also called, attempting to maintain the status quo as usual. You know how your mother gets, son. She means well. Means well? She is actively attempting to set up my brother with my fiancé. Lynn is sleeping in the guest room, claiming she wants space to ponder. Funny how that works. The worst part? My friend Patrick informed me that Wesley had been turning up at the coffee shop near Lynn's employment for weeks, coincidentally during her lunch hour. Very subtle, bro. I'm not playing their games. I'm not going to sit around waiting for any more innocent texts or coffee shop coincidences. I just received a call from Mom, which was most likely another lecture about how Wesley always made time for family or something. I'm going to sleep on the couch tonight. Tomorrow's going to be fascinating. Edit. Holy cow. This blew out. Thank you for your support. To answer some typical questions. Yes, we are in couples counseling. No, I didn't know about the texts until yesterday. Wesley is still blowing up my phone. I left him on read. Some of you consider this a hoax because no mother would do this. You're lucky to have normal parents. Lynn texted me that she'll be staying at her sister's apartment until things quiet down. Yes, it will help. Mom has already called twice this morning. I have not responded. I'll provide an update once I've determined my next course of action. Right now, I need a drink and some sleep. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who supported my last post. I wish I had better news, but everything happened precisely as some of you expected. Sorry for the lengthy post, but I needed to get everything off my chest. Quick recap. I'm 31, and I noticed my mother, Nancy, 55, acting strangely around my fiancé, Lynn, 28, and making jokes about my brother, Wesley, 29, being more of a man than me. You warned me, and I should have listened sooner. The last 3 weeks have been horrible. Lynn began going out more, claiming girls' evenings every Thursday and occasionally Saturdays. I didn't think much of it until I realized she came home smelling like Wesley's terrible fragrance. You know the type, the one that every wannabe Instagram fitness dude uses. Last Thursday, she stated that she was going to see her friend Amber for cocktails. Something felt odd. She was dressed differently than usual and had been texting all day with a strange smile. I decided to drive past Wesley's apartment complex on my way to meet Patrick for our weekly Thursday gaming session. Call it intuition or anything, but her car was right there in the visiting area. I waited in my truck for about 20 minutes, feeling my blood pressure rising with every minute. Then I noticed them through his ground floor window. They sat on his couch, her head on his shoulder, watching something on his laptop. My own brother and my fiancé, looking as comfortable as can be. I am not proud of what happened next, but I am also not regretful. I marched straight up and knocked on his door. The look on their faces as they opened it, Wesley and his dumb compression shirt, Lynn and the things I got her for her birthday. I'll never forget this. How long? Is all I asked. Lynn began crying, but not the guilty type, but the I got caught kind. Wesley attempted to walk between us, inflating his chest like he often does. Bro, we need to talk about this like adults. I cut him off. How long? 2 months, Lynn muttered. It just happened. You're always working late, and Wesley understands me better. I laughed, actually. I laughed. Understand you better? The guy who still lives in a rented studio apartment at 29? The one who sells overpriced protein powder to college kids. That's when everything started to go wrong. Wesley tried to throw a punch. He was always a hothead. I grabbed his arm and shoved him back into his flat. Really, you, my fiancé, and then try to hit me? Real classy, bro. I called our mother right there on speakerphone. Do you want to know what she said? She genuinely chuckled and said, well, honey, I tried to tell you. Wesley's always been the stronger one. Lynn needs a real man, not someone who's going to bore her to death. Within a few hours, the family group chat had exploded. Wesley played the victim, alleging I threatened him. I did not. Lynn used the butterfly emoji to accompany a hazy Instagram tale about following your heart. My mother began calling everyone, weaving her version of events in which I was the evil person who drove Lynn away due to my workaholic tendencies. Dad is staying out of it, which is typical. My sister texted that she is appalled with all of them. The extended family is divided. Half believes I should man up and fight for my relationship with my unfaithful fiancé, while the other half has some sense. Lynn moved out yesterday while I was at work. She took everything I ever gave her, as well as other things she didn't own. She left her ring on the kitchen counter with the remark, I never meant to hurt you. Classic. The kicker? Mom organized a family supper tonight. Guess who arrived together? Yes, Wesley and Lynn are holding hands like teenagers. Mom looked so proud you'd think she'd planned a royal wedding. I didn't go, of course. I sat at home looking for all the indications I'd missed. The unexpected gym sessions, the new clothes, the way she'd turn her phone away when texting, Wesley showing up at family occasions he typically avoided, and Mom's frequent comparisons. Here's the thing. I'm not sad. I am not even angry anymore. I'm just finished. I'm over Wesley's phony alpha guy act. I'm done with Lynn's victim routine. I'm done with Mom's manipulation. They think I'll just take it and show up at Christmas as if nothing happened. They have no idea what is coming. TLDR. I caught my fiancé with my brother. Mother practically arranged the whole thing. They're now playing the happy couple while portraying me as the bad guy, but I'm not taking it lying down. Edit. Many thanks for the prizes and messages. To everyone who has asked, yes, I have already spoken with a lawyer about what Lynn took, and no, I am not going to try to work it out as some of you advised. Some bridges need to be burned. Edit 2. Stop demaying me and asking for Wesley's Instagram. I understand you want to disgrace him, but I'm doing it my way. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since my previous update, and holy everything just went horribly wrong. Remember how Wesley and my mother used to gloat about how I'd ultimately come around and accept things as they are? Yeah, karma is a beach, and I am her favorite wingman right now. First and foremost, thank you for all of your supportive direct messages. You guys kept me focused when I wanted to drink myself stupid. Special thanks to the person who advised that I look into Wesley's business methods. You were on to something there. So, remember how Wesley was constantly bragging about his personal training business? It turns out Mr. Perfect was not exactly following the rules. All those protein supplements he sold to his customers, he was getting them from a shady supplier and repackaging them in his garage. I may have provided an anonymous tip to the fitness certification board regarding his unlicensed practice. Whoops! What is the best part? He was conducting his business using Venmo and Cash App without reporting anything. That type of information tends to pique the curiosity of tax officials. I didn't even have to do anything illegal. I simply forwarded some of his social media postings where he was literally bragging about his cash-only dealings to the appropriate individuals. My mother, Nancy, was not pleased when Wesley's certification was suspended. She came to my flat last Tuesday, yelling about how I was killing the family. I just stood there sipping my coffee as she was having a meltdown in the hallway. My neighbor even filmed it. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. TikTok truly took off. You're just jealous because Wesley's a real man, she yelled. I just chuckled and added, real men pay their taxes, Mom. The expression on her face was amazing. But this is where things get better. Remember how my mother was always the top real estate agent in our area? Turns out she's been cutting corners too. Nothing huge, but enough that when someone, certainly not me, began investigating her business operations, things became intriguing. What about those fantastic reviews she was always bragging about? Half of them vanished after being identified as suspicious. Lynn is beginning to detect flaws in her beautiful new man. Wesley had to cancel their weekend excursion since he could no longer afford it. She tried to contact me through Patrick last week, stating she misses our conversations. Yes, right. Patrick told her that I was too preoccupied with my new promotion to care about her drama. Oh, did I mention I was promoted? It turns out that channeling your anger into work rather than drinking produces positive results. The raise is good, but the timing is even better. Wesley is having to move back in with our parents because he can no longer afford his apartment. The family is now separated. Half of them are not speaking to me, which is good because I didn't like those cousins in the first place. The other half continues to send me funny emojis whenever Wesley or Mom write cryptic Facebook statements about being strong in the face of critics. Everything came to a climax last night at a family meeting intended to sort things out. Mom and Wesley ambushed me at Dad's home. They attempted to guilt-trip me about family loyalty while Lynn sat there looking uncomfortable. I quickly brought out my phone and showed the video of Mom telling Lynn that Wesley was more manly than me. Dad had not seen that one before. His face changed from crimson to purple quite quickly. He requested Mom to go. This is the first time I've ever seen him stand up to her. Wesley tried to get in my face, saying I was sad for not fighting fairly. I simply smiled and asked him how his protein shake company was going. He swung at me, missed, and his face hit Dad's coffee table. He now has a shattered nose that matches his wounded ego. Lynn began crying, stating that this was not what she wanted. I simply shrugged and replied, "You made your bed. I hope it was worthwhile." I then went out, leaving Wesley bleeding on Dad's carpet. This morning, my phone was flooded with alerts. Wesley's certification board made their final verdict online, and he will be barred from personal training for at least 2 years. Mom's real estate broker fired her after additional complaints surfaced. And Lynn? She is informing everybody who will listen that she made a mistake. What is the best way to exact revenge? I am truly happier today. I got my own place, My job is doing well, and I've met someone new who values loyalty. Life is funny like that. TLDR. Brother and ex-fiancé believed they had won via cheating. Mom backed them. I played the long game, legally revealed their nefarious methods, and now they're all paying the price while my life is better than ever. Edit. Holy cow. This blew out. RIP inbox. No, I will not post the TikTok video. I'm trying to maintain some privacy here. Edit 2. Stop asking for Lynn's social media. It's not cool, guys. Edit 3. Yes, Wesley attempted to swing at me. No, I did not press charges. His shattered nose and ruined reputation were enough. Update 3. Thank you to everyone for your support. It's been 2 months since my last update, and things have really escalated. Grab your popcorn, for Karma has finally arrived, and she's a stone-cold beach. TLDR, Wesley's life crashed. Lynn crawled back, LOL no. And my mother's idyllic little world disintegrated. Sometimes vengeance is simply watching others kill themselves. At 6 a.m., the phone started vibrating last Thursday. I ignored Wesley's first several calls, but by the time I got out of the shower, I had 19 missed calls from him. Lynn and my mother didn't bother phoning back. I just prepared coffee and watched the show on Facebook. Remember how I described Wesley's supplement business in my previous post? It turns out the protein shakes he was selling were not quite legal. Someone, not me, anonymously informed the health department about his unlicensed company. They conducted a surprise check and discovered his garage filled with outdated supplements that he was repackaging as premium protein blends. What is the best part? He had been peddling this trash at his gym. When word spread, his clients began commenting about feeling sick. The gym promptly dismissed him, his personal training certificate gone. My mother used to brag about her affluent clients. It's all gone. But wait, things get better. Remember the electrical work Wesley did at Mom's office? The one she kept telling me to admire because, your brother is so handy? It's interesting how the building inspector showed up after receiving images of unlawful electrical work. My mother's real estate office had to close for 2 weeks for emergency repair. Cost her a fortune and she failed to close 3 sales. I did not do anything wrong. I simply ensured that the appropriate individuals received the correct information at the right time. Lynn began to reconsider her upgrade when Wesley found himself unable to pay their flat any longer. She genuinely showed up at my house last week, weeping about how she had made a mistake. I told her I was busy. I was actually preparing for a date with Zoe, the new receptionist at my gym. Yes, Wesley's former gym. Petty? Maybe. Worth it? Absolutely. The real satisfaction came during Sunday's family meal. Mom insisted on these wee-wee meetings, using them to highlight her successful offspring. This time I did turn up, first time since the separation. I brought Zoe. Mom almost choked when she saw us. Wesley and Lynn were also present, both of whom appeared unhappy. Wesley is wearing his old high school clothes since he cannot afford new ones. Lynn was trying to capture my attention, but I was too busy telling everyone about my promotion. Supervisor position, company truck, the full thing. Mom tried to divert the subject, but Dad, who has finally grown a spine, kept inquiring about my job. Then Wesley lost it. He began yelling about how I had wrecked his life. Mom leaped in to defend her precious baby boy. I just sat there eating potatoes while Wesley had a meltdown. He even accused me of reporting him to everyone. Of course, he couldn't prove anything. I simply smiled and inquired whether he had tried the new protein shakes at the gym. I heard they were legit. Lynn attempted to play mediator, which was amusing. Steven, can't we all just get past this? Lynn, what are you moving past? Your decision to become a stronger man who now cannot afford General protein powder. Mom's real estate business is suffering. It turns out that when you lose your office for 2 weeks and are charged with health code breaches, people begin searching elsewhere. The gossip group she adored? They're having a field day with her handyman son and the expired supplement scandal. What about the cherry on top? Dad eventually spoke up. He told Mom he was weary of her playing favorites. He has been sleeping in the guest room and talks about taking some time to reflect. I did not have to throw a single punch or break any laws. I simply sat back and watched karma do her thing. Wesley's strength proved ineffective when his house of cards crumbled. Mom's beloved golden child is now the neighborhood joke, and Lynn, last I heard, is looking for teaching jobs in another district. Me? Life is good. Zoe is great. She respects a man who works hard rather than just bragging about his protein shakes. The promotion came with a good raise, and best of all, I slept like a baby knowing that all I had to do was wait for their own deeds to catch up with them. Mom still calls occasionally, typically wailing about how I have pulled the family apart. I simply let it go to voicemail. Wesley attempted to connect on LinkedIn last week. Denied. Lynn sent a lengthy email discussing closure. Read messages were deleted. They desired a stronger man. They did get one, but it wasn't what they expected. Edit. Because people keep asking, yes, all of the reports and tips were entirely real. They were actually selling expired vitamins. The electrical work was clearly not up to code. I just made sure everyone noticed. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My parents forced me to lose weight for my sister's wedding, but after my transformation, they couldn't handle my success. Growing up, I was always an overweight child. I've always been bigger than the majority of the other kindergarten students. While my peers were still figuring out what made them distinctive, my size had already stood out. As I grew older, the weight I carried became more visible. By high school, I was indisputably overweight, and my shape and girth served as a continuous reminder of my differences. College was not much different. While some of my peers began to find who they were or explore new aspects of themselves, I stayed stuck in the same identity. Overweight and occasionally fighting with it. It wasn't easy being the bigger kid. It exposed me to continual ridicule, mockery, and nasty comments from people who didn't know or cared to understand me. Growing up, I was bullied more than I care to recall. Classmates teased me mercilessly. Their insults ate away at me, creating profound doubts and self-doubt that felt impossible to overcome. They'd call me names, tell cruel jokes, and I'd frequently be the punchline. I was always singled out as if I were somehow unworthy of affection or companionship. I was continually excluded from games, parties, and gatherings. It felt like I was always on the outside, watching everyone else go through the regular ups and downs of childhood and adolescence from a distance I couldn't reach. These years of bullying influenced how I perceived myself and responded to the world. I felt out of place with others, so I sought sanctuary in books. I lost myself in literature and stories that helped me escape my daily troubles. Books did not judge me. They did not ridicule me. I became known as the nerd, and I didn't like it all that much. Bonnie, my younger sister, was very different from me. She was only a year younger than me and possessed an effortless charisma that drew others to her. Bonnie thrived in social situations, whereas I was shy and reserved. She had a fascinating personality. She could go into a room and instantly have everyone smiling, laughing, and absolutely fascinated by her. Bonnie didn't just make friends easily. She seemed to have an intrinsic ability to persuade people to support her, almost as if she were the sun around which everyone gravitated. Regardless of our differences, I adored her. I took my job as her older sister seriously, feeling fiercely protective whenever she needed it. When she began attending the same high school as mine, I was overjoyed. Initially, being Bonnie's older sister made me feel proud, as if I had a particular place in her life. However, as she grew older, things began to alter. As Bonnie settled into high school and began to create her own personality, I saw a difference in how she perceived me. She began to see how different we were and how differently we were treated. Whereas I was the bookish, quiet kind, she was vivacious and popular, someone who rapidly established herself among the cool circle. I observed as she became aware of my eccentricities and insecurities, which had previously made me appear uncool. Bonnie began to distance herself from me as she found new pals. She would then try to actively ignore or avoid me in school. That hurt. It genuinely pained me that my own siblings saw me as inferior. Nonetheless, I did my best to accept her decision and give her the distance she appeared to require, even though it hurt to think I was losing not only my sister but also a friend. But gradually, Bonnie stopped ignoring me and began to associate with others who made me feel like an outcast. Bonnie and her pals would take advantage of any opportunity to humiliate me. Whenever we met in the corridors or at lunch, they taunt me in front of other students or, worse, try to trip me as I passed with my lunch tray just to make everyone laugh. It felt like I was losing her, not to new people, but to the same taunting and abusive conduct I'd been subjected to for so long. I was always on guard, attempting to avoid not just my peers' criticism but also the humiliation inflicted by my own sister. It hurt a lot, especially because it came from someone I had always admired and looked up to. When Bonnie invited her friends over, they would all gang up on me at home. They would rush into my room without knocking, then laugh and gesture to my body. They'd fling insults like geek and fatty at me like they were nothing. I felt like a zoo animal, as if I were their source of entertainment. When they entered my personal space in my room, I felt small and alone, as if I were an alien in my own home. I tried to explain it to my parents several times, hoping they would realize how tough it was for me to deal with Bonnie's conduct. But every time I brought it up, they dismissed my worries. They'd smile and defend her acts, claiming that this is how siblings bond, that Bonnie was only playing around with me. They told me it was harmless, even suggesting that I loosen up and stop taking everyone's taunts so seriously. They told me that I was older and should be more patient and resilient. So, not only did I face years of bullying from my peers, including my own sister, but my concerns were repeatedly rejected by my parents. It made me feel isolated, as if no one in my own family realized or understood how deeply it hurt. The only time I ever felt properly noticed by our parents was when I received my grades. Academics had always come effortlessly to me, and I became accustomed to receiving high grades. In a way, it was the one area where I felt superior to everyone else. It was also the one way I could make my parents proud, the one part of my life that they appeared to actually care about. My parents enjoyed bragging about my accomplishments to friends and relatives, portraying me as the family scholar, as if my grades were evidence of their parenting prowess. But Bonnie detested the analogies. She was not an academic overachiever, nor did she want to be, but our parents' repeated reminders of my accomplishments made her resentful. They put my grades up as an example, meaning that she needed to do the same. I could always tell she was frustrated and angry, which is probably why she did what she did to me. Bonnie would occasionally attempt to destroy my hard work in order to get back at me. She would sneak into my room in the middle of the night and grab my homework, often just before a major task was due. I'd wake up the next morning to find my perfectly completed work stolen. Panic would set in, and I'd feverishly hunt through my books, papers, and files, becoming increasingly anxious with each passing minute. And there she'd be, smirking, watching me from the doorway, relishing every moment of my anxiety. To her, it was a minor victory, a way to bring me down a peg and remind me that I wasn't invincible. She understood how important my grades were to me, how much of my self-worth I had invested in them, and she enjoyed disturbing that aspect of my life. I only found out about her stealing my assignments years later when she drunkenly admitted one evening. My relationship with Bonnie has softened over time, but we are still far from close. You could say we've matured a little, and some of the animosity from our youth has dissipated. However, the strong closeness that siblings often enjoy did not fully emerge between us. After graduation, I moved out and started a new life in a new city with an interesting job and new chances, which meant I didn't see my family as much. As time passed, our communications became limited to occasional phone calls or texts. So, last year, when I scheduled a summer visit home, I was truly excited to see everyone. It had been a long time since we'd all gotten together as a family, and I was excited to catch up and reconnect. However, not everything went as planned. Our family lunch began well enough. Everyone appeared delighted to see me, and for a moment it felt like old times. That changed, however, when Bonnie unexpectedly revealed her engagement. None of us saw it coming, and we initially assumed she was joking. However, it was instantly apparent that she was serious. She proudly put out her hand, displaying a gorgeous ring, and I couldn't help but remark how exquisite it was. I was genuinely happy for her, delighted that she had finally met someone she loved and who loved her back. Almost as soon as the congratulations subsided, Bonnie turned to me and inquired about my recent activities. I told her about my profession, my life, and how rewarding things had been for me. Before I could finish, she cut me off. "I can't help but say this," she started, smirking. "But why are you still fat? If your life is truly amazing, shouldn't you have shed weight by now?" Her remarks hit me like a slap, reawakening old insecurities that I thought I had overcome. The room became uncomfortably silent, and I could feel everyone's gaze on me, waiting to see how I would respond. I merely shrugged and tried to laugh awkwardly at her comment, but my parents immediately joined in to criticize me. They began discussing how I was still obese and unmarried and how they were concerned I would never have children. I felt so mortified hearing them talk like that. My accomplishments, the work I was proud of, the life I had made for myself in another city didn't seem to matter in their eyes. They were just concerned with my weight and the fact that I did not have my own family. As my parents and sister continued to talk about me, their comments wound deeper than I imagined. I had spent years eventually discovering myself, gaining confidence and freedom, but in those moments, I felt like the same nervous, awkward teenager I had always been, anxious for my family's acceptance and approval. My parents then applauded Bonnie for getting engaged before me and expressed their pride in her. To them, I was the inferior child, successful but not quite enough. What was supposed to be a happy family reunion had swiftly turned into a heartbreaking reminder of old scars. At that point, I felt more like an outsider than ever. Bonnie did not stop. She continued to ask probing questions. "So, when are you getting married? I mean, do you even have a boyfriend?" She was blatantly mocking me in front of everyone by bringing up my romantic life. My parents soon jumped on the subject, agreeing with Bonnie that it was past time for me to find someone before it was too late. They pointed out how Bonnie, being younger, was settling down before me, whilst I, the older one, was wasting my life away at work. I attempted to argue that I liked my life the way it was, that my work and freedom provided me with fulfillment. My career paid well and I was passionate about it, so why did I need to meet a spouse or have a child to be happy? "I am content just the way I am," I informed them. But my words didn't appear to register. My mother especially appeared contemptuous. She gave me a sharp look and taunted me. "What's the point of earning all that money if you don't have anyone to come home to?" It was as if she couldn't believe that happiness existed outside of marriage or family. Sitting there, I had the typical feeling of being misunderstood, that my life choices were disregarded. This was my family, and they were supposed to know me best. However, they appeared to be preoccupied with a different definition of happiness than mine. I had come home seeking connection and warmth, but instead got judgment and taunts. Bonnie then smirked and added, "I expect you to at least have a +1 by the time my wedding rolls around." She chuckled and kept going. "I don't want people thinking my sister is some old miserable woman all alone while I'm getting married." The comment stung. I simply shook my head and assured her, "I'd try." That's when my folks spoke out again, matter-of-factly. "Bonnie's wedding is almost a year away. Even if you can't find a partner, you could at least try to lose weight and look more presentable for her wedding." They suggested that if I reduced weight, it would be simpler for me to attract a partner. Bonnie enthusiastically agreed with them. "Yeah, I want you to lose a few pounds at least," she remarked nonchalantly, as if she was doing me a favor. I sat there astonished and humiliated, with an aching that I hadn't felt in years. How could my relatives talk to me like this? Did I truly deserve their hateful words simply because I was overweight? Was I not meant to have feelings because I was fat? I was a normal person just like them. I functioned like everyone else. I never considered my weight as an impediment, so why did they? I'd even dated men who liked me just the way I was. But my parents and Bonnie made it sound like my weight was preventing me from finding love or men approaching me, which wasn't even true. I wanted to defend myself and tell them how terrible their statements were, but I felt frozen, unable to find the correct words. Their statements took me back to high school, to the agonizing times when my weight made me a target. I despised how nonchalantly my family brought up my deepest concerns without considering how they made me feel. So, I sat there, holding in my pain, and let the topic go to anything else. When I returned home from my trip to see my family, I pushed myself into reducing weight with a zeal I had not realized I possessed. It began as a way to prove something to my family, but it gradually grew very personal. I joined a gym, followed a rigorous diet, and even hired a personal trainer. My trainer has been a lifesaver. After going through her own change from overweight to healthy weight, she knew just how to assist me through a path tailored particularly for me. She created a routine specific to my goals and encouraged me every step of the way, reminding me to give myself grace when I stumbled. This time, everything seemed to click. I started losing weight steadily, and as the pounds came off, I felt lighter, not just physically but also mentally. For the first time in my life, I began to feel and appear different. My confidence increased quickly. I used to assume that decreasing weight wouldn't have much of an influence, but it has. People see me differently today. Strangers are nicer and more attentive. Friends and colleagues see me with fresh respect. I can't deny that this seems like a validation I've never gotten before. It's as if I've suddenly become more noticeable than I was before. My new body brought a new sense of style. I overhauled my entire wardrobe, filling it with items I had only fantasized about wearing. I even opted for a full hair makeover, attempting a daring and trendy style that I would have been too afraid to try in the past. Perhaps it seems expensive, but I've never felt so good. I look in the mirror now and don't recognize the person staring back. It's like meeting a version of myself that I never knew existed. I'm proud of how far I've come, not just because I lost weight, but also because I gained confidence and self-assurance. With Bonnie's wedding just 2 weeks away, my family has invited me to fly down and join them for lunch next week to finalize the plans for her special day. But I don't feel like returning home. I don't want my family to ridicule me again or make me feel tiny, especially now that I'm finally feeling good about myself. For the first time in a long time, I don't want to go to Bonnie's wedding anymore because of how she and my parents have treated me. But I know if I don't go, they'll be furious and give me a long lecture about how family is family and how no matter how heartbroken I am, I must be present for Bonnie's big day. So, what happens if I do not attend my sister's wedding? Update 1. Wow! I'm overwhelmed by everyone's response. Some of your proposals are truly humorous. I can't believe you're encouraging me to show up and mess with my sister now that I've lost so much weight. Growing up as a fat kid had a negative impact on my self-esteem, particularly in terms of how I perceived myself. I struggled with self-doubt for a long time, always believing that I wasn't good enough or didn't measure up to others. But reading all of your responses has been a game changer. It's as if you've helped me see myself in a completely new light, and I'm finally starting to feel more confident than I ever have. In fact, I'm seriously considering turning up to my family's lunch and shocking them. They haven't seen me in a long time, and since I don't use social media, they have no idea how much weight I've dropped. It will be interesting to witness their reactions. Update 2. Okay. Reddit, you're not prepared for this upgrade. Grab some popcorn because things are about to get exciting. I decided to fly down to join my family for lunch as I previously stated. I believed that when they saw me, they would be proud of the transformation I had undergone. After all, they were the ones who pushed me into it in the first place. Surely they'd be overjoyed to see the positive improvements in me and finally recognize the effort I'd put in. When I walked into my parents' house, their jaws absolutely dropped. They looked at me stunned, as if they couldn't believe I was the same person. After a time, they stammered, wondering if it was actually me. I gave them a big hug, thrilled with their reaction. They continually complimented my appearance, saying how beautiful I looked and how they couldn't believe it was me. However, when Bonnie came, the situation changed. She didn't notice me at first, disregarding me as if I were invisible, as she had done so many times before. But when I rose up to greet her, she did a double take, her eyes widening with surprise. She gave an odd, almost forced laugh before reaching over and pushing her fingers on my stomach, wide-eyed as if she wanted proof that I had truly dropped all of that weight. My parents laughed at her reaction and explained that they too couldn't believe it at first. As we settled in for lunch, the subject turned to my makeover. Bonnie and my parents bombarded me with questions about how I had done it, marveling at how different I appeared. Their voices were full of surprise, as if they had never imagined I could look any other way. Bonnie in particular kept saying that she had never anticipated me to alter so dramatically after dropping weight. Then she dropped this gem. When I first asked you to lose weight, I never expected you to look this pretty. I didn't even know you had that jawline and those ankles beneath all that fat. I hesitated, attempting to maintain my cool, and smiled at her before reminding her, Bonnie, I've always been pretty. Losing weight just enhanced my features. Bonnie, on the other hand, contended that there was something more about me that was distinct. Then she had the courage to ask, did you have some surgeries done on yourself? Because there's no way you look this good by yourself? I could feel my blood starting to boil. The hubris to believe that I required surgery to look attractive when, in fact, I had worked so hard to get my current appearance. I looked her directly in the eyes and replied, wow, Bonnie, it's amazing that you think that little of me. No surgery, just a lot of hard work and self-love. Something you might want to try sometime. Bonnie's expression changed from surprise to displeasure, but I didn't care. It felt amazing to finally say something and put her in her place. Before she could react, my parents jumped in, attempting to smooth things over in their own way. You shouldn't be offended, my mother replied. The three of us have just never seen you look this way before. Honestly, you look even more beautiful now than Bonnie does, and she's the one getting married. Bonnie appeared much angrier following Mom's remark. I simply ignored her and concentrated on my food, allowing my sister to seethe in her rage. Then my mother joined in. You know, I was thinking, maybe you should go back to your original hair color. I think you'd look even better with your natural shade. This blonde look makes you stand out too much. Maybe you should just go back to your old look. Bonnie and my father quickly agreed with her. My dad concurred with my mom and said, Bonnie has always been the blonde daughter of the family, and you were the brunette, so it would be a good idea for you to go back to your original hair color. It might make you look more like yourself. Hearing their statements, I was taken aback. I suddenly felt like the three of them were ganging up on me, attempting to bring me down. My hairstylist had suggested that I change my hair color to blonde because it better matched my skin tone and complexion. It had nothing to do with attempting to outperform or overshadow my sister. I could see why Bonnie was jealous of me. I looked nice now, but I couldn't figure out why my folks were so unhappy with me. It was as if they wanted to transform me back into who I was, despite the fact that they had wanted me to be more acceptable for their darling daughter's forthcoming wedding in the first place. But now that I did, they couldn't accept who I had become. Instead of recognizing my progress, they sought to undermine me. I finally questioned my parents. What's your problem? Why can't I be blonde too? Does my sister own that color or something? I paused, annoyed. No, she doesn't. I can be blonde or brunette. It's my choice. Why does it even matter to you so much? I couldn't understand why they were so obsessed on my returning to my former self, as if my appearance had to match who I was before. My mother scoffed at me and claimed that I was purposefully attempting to undermine Bonnie's wedding by making an effort to stand out with my appearance. Bonnie joined in, stating, with your weight loss, you're already going to stand out. So do you really need to take my hair color too? My father, as usual, agreed with her, telling me that I was being difficult for no reason and that, as Bonnie's sister, I should be more tolerant. I couldn't believe what I heard. It was not about stealing anything. It was about having the ability to do whatever made me happy. But instead of supporting it, they were all concerned about how it would make Bonnie uncomfortable. You know what? I'm done with this, I murmured, the words almost burning as they left my lips. The three of you are so caught up in your own negativity that you can't even accept that I've changed. The truth is, I've always been amazing just the way I am, but none of you ever saw it. Now, even after I've lost weight, it's still not good enough for you. No matter what I do, it's never enough. I took time to process what I had just said. They only gazed at me and it didn't matter. I was done with holding back. Since you all have so much to say about me, I think it's time I gave you some unsolicited advice, just like you love to give me. I turned to my mother first, feeling the words surge inside me like a deluge. Mom, I really hate how loose the skin is around your eyes and your lips. They droop on one side when you laugh. I can't help but notice all your crooked teeth. And honestly, it's just disgusting to me. I just gave her a second to react before turning to my father. "Dad," I said with a stern voice, "you're bald. You really have no right to say anything about anyone's hair or their hair color. How are you going to criticize someone's looks when you can't even keep a full head of hair?" I noticed his face stiffening, but I wasn't finished yet. Finally, I resorted to Bonnie, "And you, don't ever talk down to me again. Between the two of us, I've always been the better-looking sibling, but now with all the weight I've lost, you look even fatter than me. Just look at those chubby arms of yours." Bonnie's face flushed with shame, and she appeared to be about to burst into tears. I then hoisted my glass, downed my drink in one go, and walked out with a smirk, leaving everyone stunned and astonished. I had spoken everything I needed to say. I couldn't believe those words had come out of my mouth, but I didn't regret them one bit. They deserved to be humiliated after years of being criticized. After lunch, I flew directly back home. I did not want to stay behind and attend Bonnie's wedding. Since then, my phone has been overloaded with voicemails and texts from my parents and Bonnie. They've been calling me disrespectful and foul-mouthed for how I spoke to them and for simply leaving. Mom even insists that I fly back down to attend Bonnie's wedding because it won't look good to her in-laws if I don't. Update 3. So, I ended up skipping Bonnie's wedding, thanks to all of your suggestions. Instead of returning home to attend, I decided to treat myself to an impromptu staycation at a 5-star resort. Honestly, it was one of the best moves I'd made in a long time. I spent the weekend doing whatever made me happy. No drama or pressure, just pure enjoyment. I treated myself to a spa day, binge-watched my favorite shows, and even visited some new places in the city I'd been longing to see. I've also blocked my relatives so they can't contact me again. I'm weary of being bullied by them and want to avoid all of the poison and drama. Right now, my primary focus is on self-care. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My fiancé proposed while I was on the toilet, and my friends called it weird. Now I'm questioning if our sweet engagement story was really awkward. It's not as bad as it sounds. My friends are just obsessed with that part, I think. Fake names. My 32F fiancé, Peter 30M, had arranged a candlelight dinner in a hotel room. There were flowers, rose petals, and music. There was my favorite dinner and my favorite dessert. Peter was in a tuxedo. I was wearing a dress. That evening was so amazing. While I was eating, my IBS started acting up. I ran to the bathroom. It was mortifying, but at least I was comfortable enough with Peter to allow him to come in. I was apologizing for ruining our evening while I was on the toilet, and he said, "It's okay." I felt like he wanted to ask me to marry him the whole evening. I told him I love him, and he said, "I love you too." I told him, "I'm sure you'll take care of me in sickness and in health." That comment made Peter smile, and he got down on one knee. I didn't care that this was the situation. I was so happy to say yes. I felt like he wouldn't have asked that evening if I didn't say the sickness and health comment. I told my best friend, Kate 33F, and another friend, Bailey 33F. I told them the truth. Kate said, "It's weird, creepy, and an ass move on his part." I explained that he likely would have put it off if I didn't mention the health comment. Kate said I was desperate and that I should have some respect for myself. Bailey said if I thought Peter would ask another time, then I should have let him ask another time. Before talking to them, I thought I had the sweetest proposal story. Now I feel like an idiot who caused my amazing fiancé to have a terrible story. Am I the asshole? Update 1 and further context. The proposal happened on Saturday, and I had been holding off telling my parents and Peter's parents. Both sets of parents live in a different state. Tonight, we told my parents first via video chat. My parents are Bob 58M and Susan 58F. My mom was a massive fan of romance, and I knew she would ask about the proposal. Peter and I told my parents the whole proposal story. My mom was over the moon. She said proposing like that is better than any idea she had. My dad said it just proves the love Peter has for me. My mom asked if she could tell others, and I said, sure. I had asked my mom to be my maid of honor after getting engaged. My pick for maid of honor was either going to be Kate or my mom. I didn't pick my mom despite Kate. I'm not punishing Kate. Kate's initial reaction to the proposal story would just make her being the maid of honor awkward. Plus, my mom is so happy with our union, and she would love to plan a wedding. Then we told Peter's parents via video chat. His parents are Chuck 55M and Linda 59F. His parents really appreciated the comedy. Chuck thanked us for giving them the gift of telling that amazing story if we're comfortable with that. I told him we're confused. Linda said she's so happy for us. Peter told his father that he wants him to be the best man. Lastly, we told Peter's sister, Juliana 27F, via video chat, as she lives in another state. She had her father's sense of humor. I hope Kate and Bailey will be bridesmaids. Yes, Kate and Bailey are single. I have been best friends with Kate since the 9th grade, so this little disagreement wouldn't ruin our friendship. Edit. Kate and Bailey both agreed to be bridesmaids when I asked via message. Kate apologized via message, and she also sent me a video of her apologizing. Kate said she appreciates that I'm still letting her be a key part of the wedding. She said that after several days of thinking about the proposal, she realizes how loving it was. She said if she had IBS, she would appreciate a guy who treats her like how Peter treats me. Bailey apologized via message. Her apology was brief, and she admitted in it that Kate told her to apologize. Update 2. Thank you to all the amazing people who gave me support on my original post. After Kate's apology message and apology video, I messaged back that I forgave her with a link to my original post. She said she really wanted to talk face to face. We went to the gym today, even though I was feeling like I was going to get an IBS flare-up. We talked while we worked out. Kate said that she was upset when she heard my proposal story and that she didn't understand why she was so upset at the time. She confessed that when she had processed her feelings, she realized it was intense jealousy. Kate revealed to me for the first time that she was diagnosed with IBS a few months ago. She said hers is not as severe as mine. She said this has been a scary time for her, especially since she has watched me suffer so much from it all these years. Kate said she would want that proposal for herself. She said she wishes she could be that comfortable with a man. She said the comments on my original post made her feel hopeful. She said looking up IBS more online has made her feel hopeful as well. Kate had explicitly asked me to make this update post. She apologized again. She said she's glad that my mom is the maid of honor instead of her. She said she's happy for me, but also very... Kate says that despite the fact Bailey had sent an apology message too, Bailey still feels awkward talking to me. Kate said that Bailey will come around, that Bailey is just too embarrassed right now after how she acted. I asked Kate if she looked up how common IBS is, and she said she looked that up after seeing the comments in my original post. She said she was shocked by how common it is. She said she was avoiding learning about it as she was scared of what she might find. I made sure to tell her that a guy has never dumped me over my IBS. She knows that I had messed around with an embarrassing amount of guys before meeting Peter. I told Kate the reason those hookups never progressed to anything real was because I was too ashamed to let a guy see the IBS part of my life. I told Kate that the person who told me I was ugly and nasty more than anyone was myself. Kate said she hasn't mentally adjusted to this yet, but she thinks she can. I told her she's my best friend, I love her, and that I will help her through this. I made a joke about poopy girls having to stick together that made her smile. After the gym, I rushed home to the toilet to deal with the IBS flare-up I felt coming. To no one's surprise, Peter took care of me when he came home from work. He even helped me to take a bath as I was experiencing so much discomfort. I want everyone to know Kate has been an amazing friend to me. The disagreement that was at the center of my original post was extremely out of character for her. I had made that post asking if I was wrong because Kate has always been very reasonable. Even with IBS, I'm happy. I have amazing friends, an amazing family, and obviously an amazing fiancé. So if you don't hear much from me on Reddit, don't worry. I'm probably just living an amazing life, even when I'm stuck on the toilet. Update 3. Right now, I'm suffering from one of the worst IBS flare-ups of my life, plus I have one whopper of a cold. But I have good news. Both Kate and Bailey visited me. Bailey now knows about Kate's IBS from Kate. I was so sick. I was laying in bed when my friends visited. Peter was there to help me, of course. Bailey actually cried as she gave her first face-to-face apology for her reaction to my proposal story. She apologized to both Peter and I. She even hugged me despite the fact that I have a cold. Peter and I both accepted Bailey's apology. I told Bailey that she doesn't have to be embarrassed to talk to me. My friends and I talked for a little while before I needed to go to the bathroom. They wished me well before leaving. Peter took care of me, of course. I'm glad that I'm on good terms with both of my closest friends. OP posted to AMA. I am an IBS girl, and I'm getting married to a man who accepts me. AMA September 25, 2024. I'm a 32-year-old with horrible IBS. I'm getting married to a 30-year-old man who loves me in sickness and in health. My fiancé is the sweetest, as he didn't let my sickness ruin his proposal. I had to rush to the bathroom during our dinner in our hotel room, and he asked me to marry him while I was on the toilet. He probably would have done it another time, but I made hints that I knew he wanted to propose. I'm incredibly happy. At this very moment, I'm suffering from both an IBS flare-up and a cold, so I have time for a Q&A. Ask me anything. Now on to the next story. Story 9. My entitled sister abandoned her 3 children, so I raised them. Years later, they offer me money as a thank you, but she demands it. Hello, I am 48F, and my younger sister, Diana, is 46F. Diana and I never got along well as youngsters. She was always snobbish and unpleasant to me, so we split up as soon as we graduated high school. I elected to continue my education, whilst she preferred to live with her boyfriend. At the moment, it was lucky that her lover was wealthy, as our parents could never have afforded the rent for her to live alone. However, she made it abundantly obvious to our parents that she was unconcerned about their opinions on her life and would do whatever she wanted. So, my parents never tried to stop her and instead let her go free. Diana had twin girls at 20 and a boy at 21, while living with her lover. My parents were pleased for her, but also anxious because she now had many responsibilities and no work. She was wholly dependent on her boyfriend's money to support her lifestyle. Diana never married her partner, which I believe was a mistake, because she would have been entitled to alimony if they split up. They had to part ways after Diana discovered that he had been cheating on her. Thankfully, he provided the child support she was entitled to, but he chose not to be a father and signed away his parental rights. The girls were 3 years old at the time, but my nephew was only 2. After that, my sister was fully on her own and required all of the assistance she could get to maintain herself. Despite our sour relationship, I chose to assist her, primarily owing to pressure from our parents. At the time, I made a respectable living, but it wasn't enough to sustain all 4 of them. However, my parents and I gave a tiny bit of money each month, and they were able to make ends meet. She struggled for the first several months because she lacked a degree and work experience. She had to start at the bottom and work her way up, which forced her to dedicate a significant amount of time to her employment in order to grow rapidly. But this was difficult because she also had to consider her children, and she couldn't simply leave them at home. Hiring a babysitter was a possibility, but it was prohibitively expensive, so she was forced to rely on me or her friends. Our parents were also working and contributing financially, so they were unable to stay at home with the children. I was in the same predicament. She didn't have any friends who would take on the duty of minding her children while she worked because they all had their own lives and occupations. As a result, she was limited to minimum wage positions that allowed her to work flexible hours and return home quickly. This allowed her to avoid paying the babysitter to stay with her children for an extended period of time, which would have been prohibitively expensive. This condition persisted for a few years, and I believe Diana began to despise her own children because she saw them as hurdles to her success. She said that they were the only things preventing her from moving forward. I would pay her a visit on occasion, not for her sake, but for the sake of the children, to make sure they were doing well. I didn't have a nice connection with her, but I wasn't ruthless enough to let innocent children suffer because of their mother's poor decisions. So, my parents and I would check on the kids on a regular basis. They were always complaining about Diana's mistreatment of them. She would chastise them for minor infractions and strike out at them simply for being children and trying to have fun. It was a dreadful existence for all of them, and I hoped I could help them by removing them from that place and keeping them with me. But I couldn't because she was the rightful parent, and I had no legal authority over them. Furthermore, she received child support from her ex and was doing her best to make ends meet. I felt awful for her, but even worse for the kids. Diana started seeing other men, which made things considerably worse. Every time a relationship failed, she blamed her children. She was convinced that once her partners discovered she was a mother of 3, they would abandon their relationship with her. I believe it was because she never mentioned her children during the early stages of dating, only bringing it up after a month or 2, which appeared dishonest. I tried several times to explain this to her, but she was convinced that she was being rejected because she had children. She kept teasing them about it, reminding them of how their father had abandoned her, and threatening to leave them as well if they didn't behave. The children were scared of her, and their childhood was defined by their mother's narcissism. This continued for years. Several times I considered taking the kids and fleeing with them, but I couldn't. I could not petition for custody or denounce her because while her actions were wrong, they did not justify taking the children away from her. So, the scenario remained, and the kids were simply grateful to have me in their life. My parents were too elderly to be their pals, but I was always there for them when they needed it. They could never tell their mother about their issues, but they could always go to their aunt, which they did whenever they had problems with school, academics, or even Diana. They would come to me, and I appreciated their trust. It's no surprise that when they turned 18, they decided to leave their mother's house and move in with me instead. Now that they were no longer children, they could select where and with whom to live, and they chose me. Diana was clearly dissatisfied and had a lot to say. She stated she had squandered 18 years of her life raising these children, only for them to abandon her in the end. She was really unpleasant about it, telling me that if I had wanted to raise her children so badly, I should have stepped in sooner rather than taking over after the work was basically done. I wanted to tell her that she hadn't actually raised them. They had basically raised themselves because she was usually at work or out on dates with guys who eventually dumped her after discovering she had 3 children. She had no idea what her priorities should be, and it was clear why things turned out as they did. The children selected the person who had genuinely been there for them over the person who had always tortured and reprimanded them. Since she couldn't find anyone and was miserable in her life, it was evident that she had no idea she was harming them because she was suffering herself. However, I did not want to rub it in her face because I knew it must have been unpleasant for her, which is why she was lashing out at me, so I kept my mouth shut, and that was it. After that, we didn't really communicate. Her children opted to leave her and live with me. Diana also chose to cut ties with all of us and cease speaking to anyone, including our parents. This was weird because they had done nothing to deserve it. I believe the fact that they hadn't chosen her side against me when my nieces and nephew opted to live with me irritated her, so she cut them off as well. It's been 7 years, and they're all doing well now. I don't know what Diana has been up to, but I know her children are doing well. My nephew attended medical school and is now a pediatrician. One of my nieces has a degree in literature and is now a teacher, and her twin sister has a hair shop. I assisted all of them in obtaining business loans and financed them to the best of my ability. I'm very proud of them because they've gone a long way from their previous home. They are now living apart. They only stayed with me for 4 years, and even then, it wasn't really like they were living with me because they were generally away at college and only came back on occasion. I believe they didn't want to return to Diana's home where they didn't feel wanted. It's been 2 years since they all moved out, and I'm very thrilled for them. I never expected anything in return for what I did because I truly believed it was the right thing to do. They were just kids, and no matter how bad things were between me and my sister, I could never be callous to them. I've always had a soft spot for them, especially since I've never had kids or married. It wasn't my cup of tea, but for them, I wanted to be there as a parental figure because their father wasn't around and, well, we all know who Diana was. They needed someone, and my parents were too old for the position, so I stepped forward. That is all I did. I never anticipated anything in return, but I am grateful that they are the type of children who think I deserve a gift of appreciation for what I've done, even though I don't believe it was something that required compensation. I appreciated their gesture. About a week ago, I celebrated my 48th birthday with my friends and family, including my nieces and nephew. I had a great time, and my nephew was kind enough to organize everything for me. Despite my desire to pay for everything, he insisted on covering the cost because he is now earning enough money to do things for me and display his appreciation. After the party, the three of them sat me down to talk. They told me that now that they were all financially established, they wanted to express their gratitude by collectively writing me a check. I tried to explain that it was unnecessary because I was still working and could support myself, but they insisted. They claimed it wasn't about repaying a debt. They could never repay me for what I had done for them since it wasn't about money. It was about the encouragement and faith I had provided them, which they could never fully repay. This was their humble attempt to show their appreciation. I was deeply moved by their genuine act and wanted to share it on social media. I just wanted to thank them for everything they were doing for me. My sister and I hadn't spoken in years, so I didn't think she would care. I was blocked on every platform and I assumed she wouldn't see it, so I felt it was fine. Diana had never followed up with us or inquired about her children's well-being after they had left home. Granted, it was they who broke up with her first and moved in with me, but that was her fault. The least she could have done was show interest in their lives and try to be a mother figure to them in order to make up for her faults. But to be honest, she didn't seem to care about the loss of communication, so I figured she was all right. Anyway, following that post, I received a reply from her a few days ago. I wasn't expecting it because, as I indicated, we hadn't spoken in 6 years. However, I should have predicted that as soon as she realized her children were financially secure, she would start sniffing around like a bloodhound, trying to figure out how much money she could obtain from them. In her reply, she stated that she had seen my post and wanted to talk about her children. She recognized that she had made mistakes in the past and had not been a good mother to the kids, but she felt compelled to give herself another shot. She claimed she had missed them a lot over the previous 6 years. I'm not sure how much truth there is in that statement because if she truly missed them, she could have contacted me at least once. She asked me to speak with her children and help bridge the gap between them, as they respond well to me. The timing was strange, so I ignored her message. However, when I failed to react, she called me in the evening, and I snapped. She insisted that I assist her in reconnecting with her children, but I refused. I was quite aware that she was merely pursuing their money, not because she truly cared about their well-being. If she truly regretted what she had done, she would have contacted them directly rather than talking to me. She couldn't let go of her pride and ego for a single second. She still expected her children to contact her, despite the fact that she was the one who had made a mistake. It was amazing how entitled she was. She tried to dispute with me, arguing that she wasn't pursuing their money and that it was offensive for me to suggest so. I assured her that I was not implying anything. It was so obvious. I felt appalled and repulsed by what she was doing. She then accused me of stealing everything from her, claiming that I had already stolen her children and was now stealing her riches. I informed her that I didn't need the money and was originally hesitant to accept the check, but now I was going to take it all because she didn't deserve it. Now she's crying on social media, telling everyone what I said and attempting to make me seem bad. Some of my relatives say I went too far with what I said, that I'm greedy, and that I owe her an apology, which is absurd. That is why I am here to inquire if I'm in the wrong for telling my sister that she does not deserve the money that her children have decided to give me. Update 1. As some responses advised, I recounted the situation with my nephews and nieces. They informed me they had heard about it from a few of our relatives and had considered speaking with me but had not had the time. However, after I called them over and discussed it with them, they informed me that they believed I did the correct thing. My nephew was open about his views, stating that he had never considered his mother as a maternal figure throughout his life. He always blamed me because she had never been there for him, and my niece agreed. He'd always been the most outspoken of the group, so it was predictable that this was all coming from him. My nieces were too emotional to speak, but he was quite angry and upset. He explained that Diana only spoke to me since she had never done the basic minimum for them. This was despite the fact that she was receiving child support from their father, and even then, she would humiliate them and make them feel horrible for merely existing, which was not their fault. They believe I did the right thing and have informed me that they will not contact their mother regardless of what happens. They also believe that I should stand up for myself and explain my side of the story online now that Diana has decided to speak negatively about me on social media. They believe that this is the most effective approach to convey the message. Therefore, that's what I'll do. I'm delighted they opted to take my side in this because my parents are staying out of it and have stated that they don't want to get involved. Diana never spoke to them after her children cut her off, which I find unusual. My parents' polite approach to this problem strikes me as unusual, given that they have not communicated with Diana in the last 6 years. I was disappointed, but at least my nieces and nephews support me now. Many people have asked me why I did not petition for custody and have the children taken away from Diana if I knew she was a bad mother and was mistreating them. I mentioned in my piece that while her actions were wrong, they did not constitute torture, abuse, or neglect. She was constantly harsh to them and wasn't emotionally present for her children. So, while I could have filed for custody, it was quite improbable that I would have gotten the children into my care. Courts typically encourage families to keep together, and in this case, they had already lost their father. Their father had abandoned them, leaving them with only their mother as a biological parent. Naturally, the court would want the family to stay together. I knew that if I filed a petition against her or took legal action against Diana, she would ensure that I never saw them again. She would make certain that she took the kids far away from me. It was already improbable that I would have been able to take kids away from her and obtain full custody, so this would have put them in a dangerous situation. This is why I decided to play it safe by staying in touch with them and being available for them at all times. I'm not sure if it was the correct thing to do in the long term, but at the time it seemed like the only option. Maybe there were other ways to deal with it, but it was all I could think of, so I did what I believed was right. It was difficult for me, and for years I debated whether I should file for custody or have the kids taken away from her and rehomed. But there's no telling what might have occurred, and I figured it was better for kids to stay with their mother and maintain touch with me and my parents than risk anything in this circumstance. I hope this answers the questions most people had for me. Maybe I came across as the evil guy for what I did, but I don't care. I know the kids are doing well in their life, and I did everything I could to keep them happy and safe. I was always there for them. Therefore, I don't feel guilty about anything. Update 2. It's been a week since Diana's message, and I've received a lot of phone calls today from family and people who have spoken with her. They were pointing out my mistakes and scolding me. It was getting really tiresome, and I was swamped with work, which is why I hadn't been able to post sooner. But today, I decided I'd had enough. After a brief talk with my nephew and nieces, I decided to finally make a post that shared my side of the story as well as, in some ways, theirs. I don't think anyone in the family realized how much those kids had been through as children, how many taunts they had to endure every day simply because Diana opted to become pregnant early and drop everything for her boyfriend at the time. Even after that, she continued to blame others for her own actions and attempted to appear as if she was doing everything in her ability to do the best for her children. But in actuality, she was never present for them. Since she was telling everyone that I had stolen her children from her and was now stealing a fortune from her now that her children were doing well financially, I felt people deserved to know the truth, not just her twisted version of events in which she was the victim rather than the person who tormented everyone. They had already judged me for a variety of reasons, since they only knew her side of the story and sympathized with her, but in reality I deserved to share my side of the story, as did her children. So, I typed everything up a few hours ago and published the post. So far, she hasn't said anything to me, and the only texts I've gotten are from relatives who were judging me earlier. They have now abruptly changed their tune and are attempting to apologize for judging me too soon, but frankly, it means nothing to me. I simply wanted them to know the truth. I don't care what they think of me, but it was vital for me to speak the truth, share how Diana handled her children, which is why they are no longer in contact with her anyway. Now that everything is finished, I am ready to move on from this. Honestly, I don't want anything to do with Diana anymore, and I was perfectly content for the past 6 years when she didn't contact me. I believe the same may be stated for her children as well. I don't understand why she felt the need to create so much drama if she wanted money. She might have asked for it rather than pretending to want another chance at motherhood. Update 3. It's been a day since I wrote that post. Diana may have woken up today and decided to get back at me. Instead of contacting me directly, She became increasingly dramatic and began commenting on that post, attempting to make it appear as if I was lying. But it was not going to work, obviously. As soon as she attempted to react, her children began commenting and responding to her, reminding her of particular episodes from their childhood in which she had been cruel to them. That lasted about an hour, and I didn't feel awful about it. Nobody else did because my nephew, nieces, and I were all thoroughly enjoying the process. They were utterly humiliating her, and there was no way she could get out of it, since every single lie she tried to say to make me look bad was discovered. I'm glad I chose to do this on the weekend. Otherwise, we might not have been able to respond as swiftly. Anyway, that lasted about an hour, and then she began deleting her comments so that no one could catch her in her falsehoods. However, it was too late because many others had already noticed what was going on in the comment section, and I believe she began to be called out for her actions by others. She started erasing her comments and backtracking on everything she said, and then she blocked me. She also blocked her children. I'm guessing it was her way of surrendering, and I'm pleased she did, because she would have lost in a fight with us. We clearly have the upper hand here, morally or otherwise. I believe deleting the comments would be the end of our connection, but she chose to contact me personally as well. She messaged me saying she hoped I was happy now that I had presented her as the monster and everyone hated her. It was very ironic coming from her because that was exactly what she was attempting to do to me first. She initiated it, and now when I wanted to return it to her, she is unable to accept it. I don't understand why individuals attempt to dish it out when they know they can't take it in return. Just don't cause any drama if you don't want to be held accountable for the results. Anyway, I disregarded that message, and that's what we're all going to do for the rest of our lives because she's no longer worth our attention. She has proven it. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Proposed to my girlfriend of 4 years. She said no because it wasn't a surprise. Now I'm wondering if we're on the same page about marriage. I'll start by saying I love my girlfriend a lot, but she is definitely high maintenance. We've been talking about getting married for a couple of years now, but I wanted to wait until I knew a wedding was something we could afford. I finally got a promotion and she found stable employment, so I went out and bought a ring. We went on a vacation last week. The whole trip was very romantic, and I proposed to her on the beach, which I thought she would have wanted. Turns out she expected it all along because the trip was so romantic, and she said no. She wants me to try again but wants it to be a surprise this time. She also wants a photographer to be there to capture the moment. It was pretty embarrassing when a few people came up to us to congratulate us, and she was explaining why she said no. I'm not sure what to do. She wanted it to be a surprise but also wanted me to propose as soon as I felt ready to. We also talked about her ideal engagement, and it's on a beach, yes, seriously, in a forest or in a field. I can't imagine any possible scenario where I could surprise her at one of those locations. She is not the outdoorsy type, so it'd be unlikely she would be in any of those locations anyways. I explained my frustration to her, and she just said, well, if you want to get married, you will find a way to make it work. It seems so bratty and immature, and I'm not sure how to deal with her now. I'm still really pissed off about it. What should I do about this? Am I wrong to be pissed off? TLDR. Proposed to my girlfriend, but she said no because it wasn't a surprise and there wasn't a photographer there to capture the moment. She only wants to get engaged if the proposal fits a very specific image she has. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Your girlfriend doesn't sound nearly mature enough to get married. Take this as a sign of your life to come and get out. OP, I think you're right. I had been trying to justify it for her, but judging by the overwhelming response, I should probably break it off. Comment 2. Ask your good friends their truthful opinion on her, and make sure to let them know that they won't get a backlash for saying something bad. They know better than us. OP. My friends can't stand her. Comment 3. Take the ring back to the jeweler. Does she want an engagement or does she want a marriage? I can totally see Bridezilla growing on her already. Yikes. OP, yeah, that's another thing. When we were talking about her dream proposal, she was showing me her Pinterest for her dream wedding, and it's full of stuff we won't ever be able to afford. I told her it's unlikely our wedding would be like that, but we could still make it nice, and she said she'd rather wait till we can afford her dream wedding. Comment 4. And by rather wait, I suspect she means nag you about either getting a better job or taking out a loan to pay for what she wants. Don't do this to yourself, man. OP. Yeah, she told me I could start selling some of the furniture I make, which is something I do as a hobby, that she wants me to turn into a second job. Update 1. Here's a link to my last post, but it got deleted. To summarize, I proposed to my GF on a nice vacation, and she rejected it because she knew it was coming and there wasn't a photographer. Thank you all for your comments and messages. Sorry I couldn't respond to most, but I read them all. I decided to try and talk about it with her one last time before throwing in the towel. I wasn't really expecting much, but I just wanted to see if she'd see my side. She lives with me, so I wanted to end things on a good note. She didn't understand at all. She was still saying I needed to work for it, and she wasn't taking me seriously, so I broke up with her. Then she told me she accepts my proposal and we're just going through a rough patch, but we will work it out. She was really trying to get me to change my mind and was promising me she would be better to me. She completely ignored me every time I told her we were breaking up and was always yelling over me about how we were going to work things out now that we're engaged. Eventually, I just got tired and went to sleep thinking it was perfectly clear that it was over. I woke up Saturday to a whole bunch of messages. She found the ring and took a pic with it announcing our engagement and tagged me in it on Facebook. We got into another huge fight, and eventually I just called her parents and told them to come pick up all her stuff or it's going to the dump. As soon as she leaves, they were surprisingly understanding. Her dad seemed really embarrassed by her, but they were a huge help. I know it's illegal to do that and I was supposed to actually evict her, but she got seriously violent, and I didn't want her in my house anymore. She smashed my iPad and knocked my PlayStation off the TV stand, and both are completely broken, so I didn't want to wait around and see what else she would do. She wouldn't even give me the ring back. Her dad had to guilt her into it. It was pretty pathetic. So that's the end of us. Really sucks I wasted the last 4 years with her, but I guess it was better to get out now. It's nice that I can hang out with all my friends again. A girl I'm friends with asked me out on a date, so that's what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm actually pretty nervous. I know it's way too early, but even if it doesn't work out, it should be fun to start dating again. TLDR. Broke up with GF, and she decided that meant we were engaged. Then she threw a fit and broke my iPad and PlayStation. Relevant comments. Comment 1. A girl I'm friends with asked me out on a date, so that's what I'm doing tomorrow. Too soon, bro. OP. Oh, she knows the entire situation. It's not serious. She told me years ago she had a crush on me, but we're good friends now. Who knows what will happen? Comment 2. Perhaps this is why your crazy ex did not like your girlfriends? OP. Yeah, that's what started it. I don't blame my girlfriend for that. I shut my friend down then and told my girlfriend about it because I didn't want to keep things from her. I don't think I did anything wrong in that situation, but after that, she didn't want me talking to any women. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.